Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Return. Liam Knox stood at the airport terminal, his weathered face reflecting the harsh realities he'd endured for 7 years. At 43, his once jet black hair now showcased streaks of silver at the temples, badges of the sacrifice he'd made for his family. The international construction company had offered him a fortune to oversee their most dangerous projects in war-torn regions across the Middle East and Africa, a position nobody wanted. But Liam had taken it without hesitation. Your family will be set for life, his boss had promised when offering the position. For 7 years, Liam had lived in shipping containers and temporary housing, breathing dust and dodging militant attacks, all while sending 90% of his substantial salary home to his wife Diana and their 2 children, Audrey and Cooper. He'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, sacrificing presents for prosperity. Communication had dwindled over the years. At first, Diana's video calls were frequent, the children always eager to see him. By year 3, they became monthly affairs. By year 5, they were rare, with Diana citing poor connection or the children being busy. But Liam persisted, building their future from afar. Now he clutched his carry-on, the only luggage he needed. His real treasures weren't material possessions, but the financial security he'd built for his family. College funds, paid-off mortgages, and substantial investments. He'd purchased a beautiful vacation property on Lake Tahoe as a surprise, their dream destination where they'd honeymooned 18 years ago. The decision to return had been spontaneous. His final project had finished early, and he'd managed to negotiate an early contract release with a substantial bonus. He hadn't told Diana. He wanted to surprise her. As the taxi pulled up to the suburban Milwaukee home he'd purchased before leaving, Liam felt a strange dissonance. The property looked different, upgraded with an expansive deck, a new garage, and landscaping that screamed professional maintenance. "Nice house," the driver commented. "Should be," Liam answered. "I paid for every brick." Anticipation building. He paid the driver and approached his front door. After 7 years of working in the world's most dangerous places, why did ringing his own doorbell fill him with such inexplicable dread? He pressed the bell, hearing the unfamiliar chime. They'd changed it. Then again, 7 years was enough time for many changes. The door swung open. Diana stood before him, her auburn hair now expertly highlighted, wearing designer clothes he didn't recognize. For a moment, she froze, her face draining of color. No running into his arms. No tears of joy. No warm welcome. "Liam," she finally stated, her voice flat. From behind her, Audrey appeared, now 17 and practically a woman. Next to her stood Cooper, 14, almost as tall as his sister. Neither showed a flicker of recognition. "Mom," Audrey whispered, "who's this guy?" "Nobody," Diana answered sharply, her eyes never leaving Liam's. "Nobody important." A knife to the heart would have been less painful. "Diana, it's me," Liam said, his voice strong despite the confusion. "I'm home." The project finished early. Cooper stepped forward protectively. "Mom said you should leave." Before Liam could respond, another voice called from inside the house. "Diana, who's at the door?" A tall man with salt and pepper hair appeared behind his family, resting his hand possessively on Diana's shoulder. He wore a cashmere sweater and had the manicured look of someone who'd never worked a day of hard labor in his life. "Who's this?" Liam demanded, his contractor's hands, calloused and strong, clenching into fists. Diana finally found her voice. "This is Roland. Roland Baxter. My fiancé." "Fiancé." The word felt like acid on Liam's tongue. "We're still married, Diana." Roland's expression shifted from confusion to realization. "You're the ex-husband? The one who abandoned the family." "Abandoned?" Liam's voice dropped dangerously low. "I've been working overseas to support them." "That's not how Diana tells it," Roland replied smoothly. "She said you chose money over family and disappeared years ago." Before Liam could correct this outrageous lie, a car pulled into the driveway. His younger brother Oscar stepped out, expression changing from casual to shock when he spotted Liam. "Well, look who finally crawled back," Oscar called, approaching with a bitter smile. The moneymaker finally failed? Liam stared at his brother, the same brother he'd been sending support payments to for years after Oscar's business had tanked. The same brother who should have been checking on his family while he was away. "Why are you here, Oscar?" Liam asked, his voice calm but deadly. "Sunday dinner," Oscar shrugged. "Roland invited me. He's good like that, takes care of the family. Unlike some people." Behind Oscar, another car arrived. Diana's father, Walter, emerged, his weathered face twisting into a sneer upon seeing Liam. "Why would you show your face now?" Walter spat. "After what you put my daughter through." Liam stood there, surrounded by people he'd sacrificed everything for, all regarding him as an intruder. Even Max, the German shepherd he'd brought home as a puppy before leaving, growled from behind Cooper's legs, not recognizing his original master. In that moment, Liam understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a complete rewriting of history. He stepped back, his face betraying nothing of the volcanic rage building inside him. "I understand," he said simply. Their relief at his apparent retreat was palpable. "I'll be in touch," he added, turning to leave. "Don't bother," Diana called after him. "We've moved on." Liam walked away without looking back, his mind already shifting from shock to something colder and more calculated. 7 years in conflict zones had taught him many things, including how to identify enemies and plan strategic responses. They had no idea what they'd just awakened. Chapter 2. Revelations. Liam checked into the Grayson Hotel downtown, a modest establishment where he could collect his thoughts. The spacious suite felt empty compared to the shipping container that had been his home for years. But at least here, he could think clearly. His phone buzzed, a text from Bernard Whitfield, his financial advisor and one of the few people who had kept in regular contact during his overseas stint. "Heard you're back in town. Need to talk ASAP. My office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bernard was more than just a financial advisor. He was the closest thing Liam had to a friend. They'd served together in the Marines before civilian life, and when Liam had started making serious money on dangerous overseas projects, Bernard was the one he trusted to manage it. The next morning, Bernard's expression was grim when Liam entered his downtown office. "You didn't tell me you were coming back early," Bernard said, bypassing pleasantries. "It was supposed to be a surprise," Liam replied flatly. Bernard sighed, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Then I guess we're both full of surprises today." For the next hour, Bernard laid out what he'd discovered. Diana had been systematically draining their accounts for years. Not all at once, Bernard would have noticed that, but gradually transferring money to private accounts and making substantial cash withdrawals. "I suspected something was off about 2 years ago," Bernard explained. "The withdrawal patterns changed. But legally, she had access. You made sure of that." Liam nodded numbly. "How much?" "About 30% of what you sent home. The good news is, I managed to secure the majority in investments she couldn't touch due to the paperwork we set up." Bernard hesitated before continuing. "There's more. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago." "You what?" Something felt wrong, Liam. The way she dodged questions about investment priorities during our quarterly calls. "I've been managing money for 20 years. I know when someone's hiding something." The PI's report was comprehensive. Diana and Roland had been involved for nearly 5 years. Roland, a real estate developer with a string of failed ventures, had met Diana at a charity function. Within months, they were involved. By year 2, he had moved his things into the house when the children were at school, leaving before they returned home. By year 3, he had essentially taken Liam's place, attending school functions and family events. Most damning were the conversations the PI had recorded. Diana and Roland laughing about the sucker overseas who kept sending money while Roland enjoyed his wife and home. "I'm sorry," Bernard said quietly. "If I'd known earlier." Liam shook his head. "Not your fault." "There's one more thing," Bernard added reluctantly. "Your brother Oscar has been part of this too. He's been working for Roland's company for the past 4 years, despite the monthly support payments you've been sending him." The betrayal was complete. Diana, Roland, Oscar, possibly even his children, all benefiting from his sacrifice while erasing him from their lives. What are you going to do? Bernard asked, concerned by Liam's eerie calm. First, I need a complete picture, Liam answered. Diana filed for divorce 3 years ago, used abandonment as grounds. But I never received any paperwork. Bernard's expression darkened. They used your overseas address, knowing mail delivery was unreliable in conflict zones. When you didn't respond, they proceeded with a default judgment. So legally, you're divorced. But the financial settlement is still pending. Diana's lawyer has been pushing for the court to liquidate everything, including your protected investments. Liam nodded slowly. Who's her lawyer? Guy named Philip Thornton. Thornton, Liam repeated, memorizing the name. And Roland's business? Baxter Development Group. They've been buying up properties on the north side. Nothing spectacular, but they've secured some interesting zoning variances recently. Liam stood, his decision made. I need you to do something for me, Bernard. Liquidate $5 million from my overseas accounts. I want cash, bearer bonds, and gold, untraceable. And I need a secure location to store it. Bernard's eyebrows shot up. Liam, what are you planning? Information gathering, Liam replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just need operating capital. This sounds more like war preparation. Liam's expression turned hard. That's exactly what it is. As he left Bernard's office, Liam made a call to a number few civilians would recognize. A private security contractor who owed him several favors from their time in Kandahar. Jackson, it's Knox. I'm calling in those markers. I need a team. Discreet, thorough, and with nothing to lose. Chapter 3. The Architect of Revenge. Liam established his base of operations in a luxury penthouse apartment downtown, paid for in cash through a shell company Bernard had quietly established years earlier as part of Liam's investment portfolio. The 3-bedroom space offered panoramic views of the city and, more importantly, complete privacy. Within 2 days, his team began to assemble. First came Mira Voss, a cybersecurity specialist with a background in both government and private sector work. Her slight frame and quiet demeanor belied her reputation as one of the most formidable hackers in the business. The payment is satisfactory, she noted, reviewing the contract. But I'm more interested in the challenge. Corporate security systems, personal devices, financial records. You're asking for complete digital penetration. Will that be a problem? Liam asked. Myra's smile was thin. Not for me. Just making sure you understand what you're purchasing. Next arrived Damon Cross, a former detective forced out of the police department after a controversial shooting. His investigative skills remained sharp, and his network of contact within law enforcement remained intact despite his official status. Your wife's fiancé, Damon reported after his first day of investigation, isn't just a small-time developer. Roland Baxter comes from old money that dried up 2 generations ago. He's been trying to rebuild the family fortune through increasingly desperate ventures. And my brother's involvement? Oscar handles community relations, schmoozing with planning commissions, zoning boards, that sort of thing. His previous business failure seems to have been carefully orchestrated. Filed bankruptcy the same month he started working for Baxter, which protected his assets while discharging debts. The final member of Liam's team was Colin Fletcher, a financial forensics specialist who had previously worked for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. His specialty was following money trails that others wanted hidden. Your wife's been smart, Colin noted, reviewing Diana's financial activities. Not smart enough, but careful. The money she siphoned from your accounts has been moving through a series of shell companies before ending up in ventures controlled by Baxter. On paper, she's not directly connected. And Roland's business? Colin's expression grew serious. That's where it gets interesting. Baxter Development has been buying properties along the proposed light rail expansion route, properties that mysteriously receive zoning changes just before purchase. The timing suggests insider information. Liam absorbed this information, the pieces falling into place. My father-in-law, Walter, sits on the City Planning Commission. Indeed he does, Colin confirmed, and has voted in favor of every variance requested by Baxter Development. For 3 weeks, Liam's team gathered intelligence, building a comprehensive picture of the elaborate betrayal orchestrated against him. Diana hadn't just taken another lover. She had systematically worked to erase Liam's existence while using his money to finance Roland's business ventures. Oscar hadn't just abandoned his brother. He had actively participated in the scheme, using his connections to facilitate Roland's property deals while continuing to accept Liam's financial support. Walter hadn't just sided with his daughter. He had abused his position on the Planning Commission to provide insider information about the city's development plans, allowing Roland to purchase properties that would skyrocket in value once the light rail project was announced publicly. Even more painful was what Liam discovered about his children. Myra's digital surveillance revealed text messages showing that Audrey and Cooper had been coached on what to say when Liam returned. "Just pretend you don't remember him," Diana had instructed. "It'll be easier that way." Only Bernard had remained loyal, quietly protecting what he could of Liam's assets while trying to uncover the truth. On the 25th day after his return, Liam gathered his team in the penthouse for a final briefing. "We now have a complete picture," he announced. "Everyone's roles, motivations, and vulnerabilities are clear." "What's the objective?" Damon asked. "Evidence gathering for a legal case." Liam's expression was cold. "No, there will be no lawsuits, no police reports, no court appearances. That would be too merciful." He unrolled architectural plans across the conference table, detailed schematics of what appeared to be a resort property. "This is Lakeview Lodge," Liam explained. "A luxury retreat on Lake Tahoe I purchased 3 years ago through a holding company. It's been renovated according to my specifications, including certain custom features." The team studied the plans, their expressions growing increasingly concerned as they noted the unusual aspects of the property's design. "2 days from now, I'll be making a phone call," Liam continued. "Everyone who betrayed me will receive an invitation they won't be able to refuse. And then the real work begins." Mira looked up from the plans. "These renovations, they're designed for psychological warfare." "Precisely," Liam confirmed. "I spent 7 years in war zones, learning how environments can be weaponized. Now I'm putting that knowledge to use." "This goes beyond revenge," Colin warned. "What you're describing is justice," Liam interrupted, "delivered by the only person who still remembers what that word means." As his team exchanged uncomfortable glances, Liam's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Diana's lawyer, demanding an immediate meeting to discuss the financial settlement of their divorce. Perfect timing. "Tomorrow," Liam announced, "we extend our first invitation. Diana and her lawyer will come here, thinking they're negotiating from a position of strength." His smile was terrifying in its calmness. They have no idea what's waiting for them. Chapter 4. First Blood. Philip Thornton had the polished arrogance of a lawyer who'd never lost a high-profile divorce case. His tailored suit and monogrammed cufflink spoke of success, as did his condescending smile when he entered Liam's penthouse with Diana at his side. Diana had dressed carefully for the occasion in a conservative navy suit that projected both wealth and respectability. Her expression was a practiced mask of dignified suffering, the abandoned wife finally confronting her negligent husband. "Mr. Knox," Thornton began after declining refreshments, "I appreciate your willingness to meet. Perhaps we can resolve this matter efficiently." Liam, dressed in a simple black suit that highlighted his physique, hardened by years of physical labor rather than gym workouts, gestured toward the conference table where documents were neatly arranged. "Efficiency is my specialty," he replied, his voice neutral. Diana barely glanced at him, keeping her eyes fixed on the panoramic windows. She'd clearly prepared herself to face the broken, desperate man she expected to find. "Our position is straightforward," Thornton continued, removing documents from his briefcase. "Mrs. Baxter." "Her name is still Knox," Liam interrupted quietly. Thornton's smile tightened. "According to the divorce decree finalized 3 years ago, which you failed to contest, which I was never properly served," Liam corrected. "The court found service sufficient," Thornton countered smoothly. "Regardless, the financial settlement remains open. Given your absence and the client's sole responsibility for raising your children, We're seeking full distribution of all marital assets and investments. Liam nodded thoughtfully. I see. And what about the funds already taken? Diana's head snapped toward him, her composure slipping momentarily. I don't know what you're implying, Thornton responded, but my client has only accessed what was necessary for family maintenance. Liam smiled, sliding a folder across the table. Would family maintenance include $2.4 million transferred to Baxter Development Group over the past 4 years? The color drained from Diana's face. Thornton recovered quickly. Any business investments Mrs. Knox made were within her rights as... Let me be clear, Liam interrupted, his voice still eerily calm. I have comprehensive documentation of every dollar removed from our accounts, every transfer to shell companies, and every investment in Roland's business ventures. I also have documented evidence of insider trading related to the light rail project, facilitated by my father-in-law's position on the Planning Commission. Diana found her voice at last. You're bluffing. In response, Liam pressed a button on a remote. The large television screen on the wall illuminated, showing footage of Diana and Roland in intimate moments, interspersed with recordings of their conversations about using Liam's money. I've been gathering evidence for 3 weeks, Liam explained as Diana stared at the screen in horror. My team is quite thorough. Thornton attempted to regain control. These recordings are likely inadmissible. This isn't about court admissibility, Liam cut him off. This is about negotiating from a position of truth. He pressed another button, and the screen displayed financial records highlighting the money trail from Liam's accounts to Roland's business. Here's my counteroffer, Liam stated, sliding another document across the table. Diana signs over any remaining claim to my assets. In exchange, I don't provide this evidence to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the local district attorney. Thornton skimmed the document, his professional demeanor cracking. This is blackmail. This is consequence, Liam corrected. Your client conspired to commit fraud, misappropriation of funds, and potentially insider trading. She can walk away with what she's already taken, which is substantial, or she can face federal charges. Her choice. Diana's carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. You can't do this. What about Cooper and Audrey? The children you taught to forget me? Liam responded, his voice finally betraying emotion. The ones you instructed to treat me like a stranger. He displayed text messages between Diana and the children, showing her coaching them on how to react to his return. Diana's shock turned to anger. You've been spying on my children? I've been learning the truth, Liam corrected. Something in short supply in this family. Thornton attempted to salvage the situation. Perhaps we can reach a more equitable arrangement. This isn't a negotiation, Liam stated flatly. It's a courtesy notification. Diana signs today, or the evidence goes to authorities tomorrow. After 30 minutes of futile protests and threats, Diana signed the agreement with a shaking hand. As she and her lawyer prepared to leave, Liam delivered his final blow. One more thing, he said casually. I'll be hosting a family gathering at my Lake Tahoe property next weekend. I expect everyone to attend. You, Roland, the children, Oscar, and Walter. Diana stared at him in disbelief. Why would we agree to that? Liam smiled coldly. Because if you don't, the evidence still goes to the authorities. Consider it a transition ceremony. One final family gathering before we go our separate ways. You're insane, Diana whispered. No, Liam replied softly. I'm finally seeing clearly. The invitation will arrive tomorrow with all details. Make sure everyone attends. After they left, Mira emerged from the adjacent room where she'd been monitoring the meeting. Phase 1 complete, she confirmed. Her phone has been cloned and the spyware is installed. We'll have access to all her communications with Roland and the others. Liam nodded, staring at the door through which Diana had just departed. Prepare the Lake Tahoe property. We move to Phase 2. Chapter 5, The Web Titans. The invitation arrived at Diana's house by private courier the following morning. An elegant envelope containing a card with embossed gold lettering. Mr. Liam Knox requests the presence of the Knox and Baxter families for a weekend retreat at Lakeview Lodge, Lake Tahoe. Private air transportation provided. Attendance is mandatory for resolution of all outstanding matters. Included was a list of attendees: Diana, Roland, Audrey, Cooper, Oscar, and Walter. The date was set for 3 days later. Diana immediately called Roland, her voice trembling as she explained what had transpired in Liam's penthouse. "He knows everything," she hissed, pacing her kitchen. "About the money, about your business, about my father's involvement. He has recordings, financial records, everything." Roland's initial bravado quickly faded as Diana detailed the evidence Liam had presented. "This is impossible," he protested. "Nobody could have gathered that much information so quickly." "Well, he did," Diana snapped. "And now he's demanding we all go to some property at Lake Tahoe." "We don't have to do anything," Roland insisted. "He's bluffing about going to the authorities." "Are you willing to risk federal charges on that assumption?" Diana demanded. "Because I'm not, and neither is my father. Walter's already called me in a panic. His entire reputation would be destroyed if this came out." Similar conversations occurred throughout the day as each invitee received their notification. Oscar called Roland in a fury, demanding to know how Liam had discovered his involvement. Walter contacted his personal attorney, seeking assurances about potential legal exposure. From his penthouse command center, Liam and his team monitored these panicked exchanges through the surveillance network they had established. "They're reacting exactly as predicted," Damon noted, listening to the recorded calls. "They're scared but still underestimating you." "Perfect," Liam replied. "Fear makes people compliant, but overconfidence makes them careless." The next morning, Oscar made his move, arriving unannounced at Liam's penthouse. Security allowed him up per Liam's instructions. "Brother," Oscar greeted with forced joviality when Liam opened the door. "We need to talk." Liam gestured him inside without warmth. "By all means." Oscar whistled, taking in the luxury apartment. "Nice place. Different from those shipping containers you mentioned in your emails." "I saved my money," Liam replied simply. "Something you might have considered." Oscar's friendly demeanor slipped momentarily before he recovered. "Look, about this Lake Tahoe thing, it's unnecessary. Whatever issues you have with Diana and Roland, they don't involve me." Liam poured himself a whiskey, not offering one to his brother. "Is that what you think?" "I know I should have been more present while you were gone," Oscar admitted, attempting to sound sincere. "But I was dealing with my own problems. The business failure hit me hard." "Yes, the conveniently timed bankruptcy that protected your assets while discharging your debts," Liam noted. "Filed the same month you started working for Roland." Oscar's expression froze. "That's not—" "Please," Liam interrupted. "Don't insult my intelligence. You've been working as Roland's community liaison for 4 years, helping secure zoning changes through your connections, all while accepting monthly support payments from me." "I needed that money," Oscar protested weakly. "And Roland needed your connections," Liam finished. "A mutually beneficial arrangement at my expense." Oscar abandoned the pretense. "What do you want? Money? I can pay back what you sent." "I want you at Lake Tahoe," Liam answered simply. "You, Diana, Roland, the children, Walter, everyone who participated in erasing me from my own life while benefiting from my sacrifice." "For what purpose?" Liam smiled thinly. "Closure." Oscar studied his brother's face, seeing something that clearly disturbed him. "You've changed, Liam." 7 years in war zones will do that, Liam agreed. "You learn who your real enemies are." After Oscar left, Mira confirmed that the tracking software had been successfully installed on his phone during his visit, the real purpose behind Liam allowing the meeting. "Now we have full surveillance on Diana, Roland, Oscar, and Walter," she reported. "Only the children remain. They'll be at the school fundraiser tonight," Liam noted. "The one Roland is sponsoring to boost his community image." Damon raised an eyebrow. "You're attending a school function?" "No," Liam replied. "But you are, as a potential donor interested in Baxter's development projects. Get close enough to clone their phones." That night, while Damon executed his mission at the school event, Liam reviewed the final preparations for Lakeview Lodge with Colin. "The property modifications are complete," Colin confirmed. Individual rooms prepared according to specifications, security systems tested, isolation protocols functional. And our legal protection? The property is owned by an offshore corporation with no traceable connection to you. The staff has been replaced with our contracted personnel, all with proper hospitality credentials, but specialized backgrounds. The airspace has been registered for private use, and lake access is restricted to the property's private dock. Liam nodded in satisfaction. And the psychological profiles? Colin opened 5 detailed dossiers, one for each adult guest. Complete. Diana fears public humiliation above all else. Roland's primary anxiety is financial failure. Oscar cannot stand being perceived as the lesser brother. Walter's reputation in the community is his most prized possession. And the children? Colin hesitated. Audrey and Cooper are victims in this, Liam. They were manipulated. They were participants, Liam corrected coldly. They knew who I was and chose to pretend otherwise. They accepted the narrative that I abandoned them, despite years of video calls and financial support. They're teenagers. Their mother had influence, yes, but they made choices. Liam's expression softened slightly. Their rooms are different from the others, less intense. This is about education, not punishment. The following morning, a luxury SUV arrived at Diana's house to transport the family to the private airfield. Similar vehicles collected Oscar and Walter from their respective homes. As the private jet bearing his guests took off, Liam boarded his own aircraft, a military-grade helicopter that would allow him to arrive at Lakeview Lodge well ahead of them. The stage was set. The players were in motion, and Liam Knox, architect of the most meticulously planned revenge in history, allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before the real work began. Chapter 6. Welcome to Lakeview Lodge. Lakeview Lodge presented an image of rustic luxury nestled among towering pines at the edge of Lake Tahoe. The main building featured a massive timber frame design with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the crystal-clear waters. 5 private guest cabins surrounded the main lodge, each offering apparent privacy while remaining within the property's secured perimeter. The 8-acre estate was isolated from neighboring properties by dense forest on 3 sides and the lake on the 4th. A single access road connected to the main highway, while a private dock provided water access. To casual observation, it appeared to be nothing more than an exclusive retreat for the wealthy. Appearances, as Liam knew all too well, could be deceiving. The private jet carrying his guests landed at the small regional airport, where luxury SUVs awaited to transport them the final 30 minutes to the property. Upon arrival, they found the main lodge welcoming, with a roaring fire in the massive stone fireplace and staff members offering refreshments. Liam greeted them in the great room, dressed casually in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. "Welcome to Lakeview Lodge," he announced. "You're home for the next 3 days." Diana glanced around nervously. "This is unexpected." "I've always appreciated irony," Liam replied. "This property sits not far from where we honeymooned 18 years ago. Remember?" Diana shifted uncomfortably, while Roland maintained a protective stance beside her. The children, Audrey and Cooper, stood awkwardly, clearly uncertain about their role in this strange family gathering. Oscar attempted to break the tension. "Hell of a place, brother. Real estate investment." "Something like that," Liam answered. "Brandon will show you all to your accommodations. We'll gather for dinner at 7. Brandon, a former military operative now posing as the lodge manager, led the group to their assigned cabins. Each had been carefully prepared according to Liam's specifications. Diana and Roland were given the blue pine cabin, decorated with subtle reminders of Liam's presence during their marriage. Family photos he'd sent from overseas were artfully displayed on walls and shelves, while the sound system had been programmed to occasionally play snippets of Diana's voice from recorded video calls, praising Liam's sacrifice and promising eternal love. Oscar was assigned the cedar cabin, where financial documents detailing his monthly support payments from Liam had been incorporated into the decor, along with bankruptcy filings that revealed the carefully timed nature of his business failure. Walter took residence in the Aspen cabin, furnished with framed copies of planning commission votes that benefited Baxter Development, alongside financial analyses showing the subsequent property value increases. The children were given the most normal accommodations in Spruce Cabin, though their phones mysteriously stopped working as soon as they crossed the property line, replaced by restricted devices that only allowed communication within the lodge network. As the guests settled in, Mira monitored their reactions from the control room hidden beneath the main lodge. Psychological distress indicators are presenting in all adult subjects, she reported to Liam. Elevated heart rates, increased perspiration, anxiety responses. And the surveillance systems? Fully operational in all cabins. Audio and video feeds are clear. Begin Phase 1 environmental adjustments, Liam instructed. Subtle variations only. Throughout the cabins, nearly imperceptible changes began to take effect. In Diana and Roland's cabin, the temperature fluctuated by 2 degrees in random intervals. In Oscar's space, the lighting dimmed and brightened unpredictably. Walter's cabin featured occasional, barely audible recordings of his most damning planning commission statements. At precisely 7 o'clock, the guests gathered in the main lodge's dining room. The table was set impeccably, with Liam at the head and place cards directing each person to specific seats, strategically positioning Diana directly across from him. "I've taken the liberty of planning the menu," Liam announced as the first course was served. "Each dish represents a location where I worked during my 7 years abroad." The appetizer, a spiced lamb dish, arrived with Liam's casual narration. "This represents Afghanistan, my first overseas post. 18-hour days rebuilding infrastructure destroyed by Taliban forces. I slept in a shipping container that reached 110 degrees during summer days." Diana picked at her food uncomfortably. "Liam, perhaps we should discuss why we're all here." "All in good time," he replied pleasantly. "We have 3 days together. No need to rush." As the main course arrived, a North African fish preparation, Liam continued his travelogue. "This dish comes from my time in Libya. Our compound was attacked 3 times during my stay. During the second attack, I took shrapnel in my left shoulder. The medical facilities were rudimentary." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a jagged scar. "I was back at work within 48 hours. The project couldn't afford delays." Cooper, who had remained silent until now, suddenly asked, "Did you really get hurt working?" "Many times," Liam answered, meeting his son's eyes directly. "The danger was why the pay was so high, why I could afford to send so much money home." "Mom said you left because you didn't want a family anymore," Audrey interjected. "That you chose money over us." A heavy silence fell over the table. "Is that what you believed?" Liam asked quietly. "It's what we were told," Cooper replied defensively. Liam nodded thoughtfully. "Tomorrow, I'll show you evidence of what actually happened. Tonight, let's simply enjoy our meal." As dessert was served, Roland attempted to assert control. "This property must have cost a fortune. Part of your hidden assets, I presume." "The very ones you've been trying to access through Diana," Liam confirmed pleasantly. "Tomorrow morning at 9, we'll begin our business discussions. I recommend everyone gets a good night's rest." After dinner, the guests retired to their cabins, unsettled by Liam's calm demeanor and cryptic statements. What none realized was that their first night at Lakeview Lodge had been designed as merely an introduction to what awaited them. In the control room, Liam watched the cabin feeds as his guests prepared for bed. "Increase environmental adjustments by 15%, he instructed Mira, and initiate first phase isolation." Throughout the property, subtle changes took effect. Cell service, already weak, disappeared entirely. Internet connections failed. The property's landline telephones registered as functional but routed all calls to Liam's team. By midnight, Lakeview Lodge was completely cut off from the outside world, its occupants unaware that they had entered a psychologically engineered environment from which there would be no easy escape. Damon joined Liam at the monitoring station. "They're all asleep except Diana. She's still trying to get her phone to work." "She won't succeed," Liam replied, watching her frustrated attempts. "By morning, they'll realize communication is impossible. That's when the real work begins. Are you sure about this approach?" Damon asked carefully. There are simpler ways to exact revenge. Liam's expression hardened. I spent 7 years in hell to provide for these people. They spent those same years betraying me, stealing from me, and erasing me from existence. There's nothing simple about what they deserve. He turned back to the monitors, watching Diana finally give up on her phone and climb into bed beside Roland. Tomorrow, Liam promised quietly, they learn what it means to be truly abandoned. Chapter 7. Sins Exposed. Morning at Lakeview Lodge arrived with seemingly perfect tranquility. Sunlight sparkling on the lake, the scent of pine filling the crisp mountain air, breakfast laid out in the main lodge's dining room. Yet beneath this serene surface, anxiety had taken root among the guests. My phone still isn't working, Diana complained, joining the others at the breakfast table. And neither is the cabin's internet connection. Same with ours, Audrey confirmed, looking up from her useless device. Roland frowned. It's a remote location. Connectivity issues aren't surprising. The landline's working, Liam noted casually, sipping his coffee. Though only for emergency calls. We are rather isolated here. Oscar studied his brother suspiciously. Convenient isolation. Privacy, Liam corrected. For our discussions. After breakfast, Liam led the group to the lodge's conference room, a wood-paneled space with a large table and a projection screen on one wall. As everyone took their seats, Brandon distributed folders to each adult guest. Before we begin, Liam announced, I want to establish a framework for our discussions. Each of you has made choices regarding me and my absence. Today, we'll examine those choices with complete transparency. He activated the projection system, displaying a timeline beginning 7 years earlier with his departure for overseas work. Let's start with the financial arrangements, Liam continued. During my absence, I sent home approximately $12 million in salary and bonuses. Diana had access to our joint accounts, from which she withdrew $4.3 million over 7 years. Diana shifted uncomfortably. I needed to support the family. Indeed, Liam agreed. However, the children's expenses, including private school tuition, extracurricular activities, and health care, totaled less than $1 million during that period. The household expenses, including the mortgage I paid off before leaving, couldn't have exceeded another $1 million. He advanced to the next slide, showing a complex diagram of financial transfers. This leaves approximately $2.3 million that moved through a series of shell companies before being invested in Baxter Development Group ventures. Roland intervened. Diana was entitled to invest marital assets as she saw fit. In her husband's business competitor, while still married to me, Liam countered. That's an interesting legal position. Walter cleared his throat. I advised her on those investments. They appeared sound, especially with insider information about upcoming zoning changes, Liam added, displaying planning commission documents with Walter's signature. Convenient how Baxter Properties received variances just before the light rail announcement. The color drained from Walter's face. Liam turned his attention to Oscar. Then there's my brother, accepting $8,000 monthly support payments from me, while simultaneously working for Roland and helping secure those same zoning variances. I needed income during my bankruptcy, Oscar protested weakly. The bankruptcy you filed the same month you started working for Roland, Liam noted. Quite a coincidence. For the next 2 hours, Liam methodically presented evidence of each betrayal, from Diana's systematic draining of accounts to Roland's strategic exploitation of her access to funds, from Oscar's duplicitous financial dealings to Walter's abuse of his planning commission position. Most devastating were the recorded conversations between various combinations of adults, plotting how to prevent Liam from ever reclaiming his place in the family. Throughout this presentation, Audrey and Cooper sat in stunned silence, witnessing the adults they trusted being exposed as manipulative conspirators. Mom, Audrey finally said, her voice shaking, you told us Dad abandoned us for money. Diana couldn't meet her daughter's eyes. It was complicated, honey. Was it complicated when you coached us to pretend we didn't recognize him? Cooper demanded, his adolescent face flushing with anger. Those text messages you sent us before he came home, Those weren't complicated. They were lies. Liam allowed this family confrontation to unfold without intervention, watching as the carefully constructed narrative Diana had built began to crumble under the weight of evidence. "I think," he finally said, "we should take a break. Lunch will be served on the terrace in 30 minutes. This afternoon, we'll discuss consequences." As the group dispersed, shaken by the morning's revelations, Liam returned to the control room where Mira awaited with updates. "Psychological stress indicators are elevated in all adult subjects," she reported. "Diana's particularly high. Pulse rate hasn't dropped below 100 since the financial evidence was presented. And Roland, attempting to make calls whenever he's alone. He's tried reaching his lawyer 6 times in the past hour." Liam nodded in satisfaction. "Increase cabin environmental adjustments to Phase 2. I want them unsettled but functional." During lunch, the group maintained an uneasy silence, broken only by occasional attempts at small talk from Oscar. The children sat apart from the adults, whispering among themselves and casting accusing glances at their mother. Roland finally addressed Liam directly. "What's your endgame here? Money? You've clearly protected most of your assets. Humiliation? You've achieved that already. What more do you want?" Liam considered the question thoughtfully. "Justice," he eventually replied. "Proportional response to deliberate harm." "We're talking about a divorce and some poor communication," Roland protested. "Not capital crimes." "Are we?" Liam's voice remained calm. "You systematically erased a man's existence. You stole his identity as husband and father. You rewrote history to villainize him while profiting from his sacrifice. If that happened to you, what would you consider appropriate consequences?" Before Roland could respond, Brandon approached to whisper something in Liam's ear. "It seems we have an unexpected development," Liam announced. "Roland has been attempting to arrange outside intervention. As a result, we'll accelerate our afternoon schedule." He stood, gesturing toward the main lodge. "Everyone inside, please. It's time for individual accountability." The group was led back to the conference room, where the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The lights were dimmer, and the room's temperature had dropped several degrees. On the table before each adult seat lay a single item related to their particular betrayal. Before Diana, printed transcripts of her conversations with Roland, mocking Liam's absence while planning how to access his remaining assets. Before Roland, financial documents revealing how his failing business had been propped up by money stolen from Liam. Before Oscar, bank statements showing support payments from Liam deposited the same days he received commission payments from Roland for securing zoning variances. Before Walter, planning commission votes alongside property purchases by Baxter Development, demonstrating the pattern of insider trading. "Each of you," Liam began, "has a choice to make. Behind your folders are legal documents. Signing them represents accountability and resolution. Refusing means consequences." Diana opened her folder first. "This is insane. You want me to sign over all remaining marital assets and publicly admit to financial fraud?" "I want you to acknowledge what you did," Liam corrected. "The financial arrangements are secondary." Roland examined his documents next. "This would bankrupt me. You're demanding repayment of all funds invested in my company through Diana, plus punitive damages. Funds stolen from me," Liam noted. "With interest." Oscar and Walter found similar agreements tailored to their specific betrayals. Oscar required to repay all support payments with interest, Walter to resign from the Planning Commission and admit his ethical violations. "And if we refuse?" Walter demanded. In response, Liam activated the projection system again. This time, it displayed a comprehensive evidence package prepared for federal prosecutors, detailing conspiracy, fraud, insider trading, and misappropriation of funds. "This information goes to the FBI, SEC, and District Attorney tomorrow morning unless all documents are signed," Liam explained. "I've already provided a preliminary report that's triggered an investigation into the light rail property purchases. This evidence would conclusively link all of you to the conspiracy." "You destroy your children's mother?" Diana challenged. "You destroyed their father," Liam countered without hesitation. "They deserve to know what kind of people raised them." As the adults argued and negotiated, Audrey suddenly stood. "We want to talk to our father," she announced, indicating herself and Cooper. "Alone?" Liam nodded, leading the teenagers to a small study adjacent to the conference room. Once inside, Cooper immediately confronted him. "Did you really send all that money home for us?" "Every month," Liam confirmed, along with letters, emails, and video calls that became increasingly one-sided over time. Audrey's eyes filled with tears. "Mom said you stopped calling because you didn't care anymore." "I never stopped," Liam said quietly. "Eventually, Diana stopped putting you on the calls. Then she stopped taking them altogether." "Why didn't you just come home?" Cooper demanded. "The contract had severe penalties for early termination," Liam explained. "And the final 2 years paid triple the annual salary, money I intended for your college funds." He opened a laptop, accessing files that showed years of communication attempts, financial transfers earmarked for the children's future, and video messages that had never been shared with them. "I'm not blameless," Liam admitted. "I chose distance to provide security. I trusted your mother to maintain our family while I was away. Both were mistakes I'll always regret." Audrey studied him with new awareness. "What happens to Mom if she doesn't sign your papers?" "She faces potential federal charges, along with Roland, your grandfather, and Uncle Oscar." "And what happens to us?" Cooper asked, his young face showing the strain of these revelations. For the first time, Liam's composed facade cracked slightly. "That depends partly on your choices. You're approaching adulthood. You have agency in determining your path forward. Would you want us in your life?" Audrey asked directly. "After we pretended not to know you?" Liam considered his answer carefully. "You were manipulated by adults you trusted. That doesn't erase the hurt, but contextualizes your actions. We could establish a relationship if you wanted that." The siblings exchanged glances, communicating silently in the way only close siblings can. "We need time to think," Cooper finally said. "Take all the time you need," Liam replied. "My door remains open." As they returned to the conference room, they found Diana, Roland, Oscar, and Walter in intense discussion, calculating their limited options. The atmosphere was tense with the recognition that Liam had executed a nearly perfect trap. "We'll need our own legal counsel before signing anything," Roland insisted. "Of course," Liam agreed reasonably. "You're welcome to consult attorneys tomorrow when communication with the outside world resumes. Tonight, you'll have time to consider your positions." He checked his watch. "Dinner will be served at 7. Until then, you're free to enjoy the property. Though I advise staying within the perimeter, the surrounding forest can be treacherous for those unfamiliar with the terrain." As the group dispersed, Liam returned to the control room where his team awaited. "They'll try to leave," Damon predicted. Roland and Oscar already attempted to reach the access road, Mira confirmed, monitoring the property surveillance. They turned back when they realized how dense the forest becomes. Liam nodded, unsurprised. They'll spend the afternoon searching for ways to escape or communicate. By dinner, they'll understand there are none. "Is that ethical?" Colin questioned hesitantly. "Is what they did to me ethical?" Liam countered. "They've had years of freedom while benefiting from my sacrifice. They can endure one night of isolation while contemplating their actions." As predicted, the afternoon saw various escape attempts by the adults. Roland and Oscar tried navigating to the main road, but became disoriented in the woods. Walter attempted to signal passing boats on the lake, only to discover the property's shoreline was designed to be invisible from the water. Diana searched desperately for communication devices, finding none that functioned. Only the children remained in their cabin, processing the day's revelations and discussing their options. By dinner time, a storm had moved across the lake, adding nature's fury to the psychological pressure building within Lakeview Lodge. As lightning flashed and thunder rolled, Liam's guests gathered one final time, their faces showing the strain of recognition that they were truly trapped until Liam decided otherwise. The stage was set for the final act of Liam Knox's meticulously orchestrated revenge. Chapter 8: The Sentence. Dinner that evening was served amid the storm's fury, rain lashing against the lodge's windows while thunder punctuated the tense silence around the table. The elaborate meal went largely untouched as each guest contemplated their precarious position. "I think we've reached the point of decision," Liam announced as dessert was cleared away. "By morning, I'll need your answers regarding the agreements." "This is a legal detention," Roland argued, though his confident tone had faded considerably since their arrival. "Is it?" Liam countered. "You all came voluntarily. The property is isolated, certainly, but the doors remain unlocked. You're free to leave, though navigating miles of forest during a storm would be inadvisable." Diana, who had remained quiet through most of dinner, finally spoke. "What happens if we sign? What guarantee do we have that you won't send the evidence to authorities anyway?" "You have my word," Liam replied simply. Oscar laughed bitterly. "Your word? After all this elaborate revenge plotting, you expect us to trust your word?" "I spent 7 years honoring my commitments under the most dangerous conditions imaginable," Liam stated, his voice hardening. "I said I would provide for my family, and I did, beyond what most men could offer. Every promise I made, I kept." He looked around the table, meeting each adult's eyes in turn. "Which of you can say the same?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "You have until breakfast to decide," Liam concluded, standing from the table. "Choose wisely." As the group dispersed for what promised to be a sleepless night, Liam intercepted Audrey and Cooper. "A moment, please." He led them to his private study, a warm space filled with books and a crackling fire that offered refuge from the storm outside. "I wanted to give you these," he said, handing each teenager a small flash drive. "They contain videos and messages I sent over the years. Things your mother never shared with you." Cooper turned the drive over in his hand. "Why now?" "Because regardless of what happens tomorrow, you deserve the truth," Liam answered. "Not my version or your mother's version, but the objective reality of what transpired." "And what about us?" Audrey asked. "Are we part of your revenge plan too?" Liam's expression softened. "No, you're both victims of the adults' choices, mine included. The agreements I've prepared include provisions for your future, regardless of your relationship with me." "What kind of provisions?" Cooper asked suspiciously. "College funds, independent of Diana or Roland's finances. Housing allowances when you're ready. Career mentorship if you want it." Liam paused. "No strings attached. No obligation to maintain contact with me if that's not what you want." Audrey studied him carefully. "Why would you do that after how we treated you?" "Because that's what a father does," Liam answered simply. "Protects his children's future, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts." For the first time since his return, tears formed in Liam's eyes, quickly blinked away, but noticed by both teenagers. "Get some rest," he said, composing himself. "Tomorrow will be challenging for everyone." Throughout the night, Liam's team monitored the cabins, tracking each occupant's activities. Diana and Roland argued bitterly, blame shifting between them as they recognized the inevitability of their defeat. Oscar attempted to draft alternative proposals, searching desperately for leverage that didn't exist. Walter made peace with his fate, recognizing that his reputation, the thing he valued most, was already compromised. Only the children slept soundly, unburdened by the guilty consciences that plagued the adults. Morning arrived with clear skies and calm waters, the storm having passed both literally and metaphorically. As breakfast was served, Liam noted the resigned expressions on the adults' faces. "Your decisions?" he inquired after coffee had been poured. One by one, they capitulated. Diana signed the agreement, surrendering all claims to Liam's assets and acknowledging her financial misdeeds. Roland committed to repaying the misappropriated funds, effectively bankrupting his over-leveraged business. Oscar accepted responsibility for his duplicity and the required restitution. Walter agreed to resign from the Planning Commission with a statement acknowledging ethical violations. "Wise choices," Liam commented, collecting the signed documents. "Brandon will return your phones and restore communications. Vehicles are waiting to transport you to the airport whenever you're ready to depart." "That's it?" Diana asked incredulously. "After all this, we just leave?" "What did you expect?" Liam inquired. "Physical retribution? Prolonged suffering?" "I'm not a monster, Diana. I simply wanted accountability." Roland, never one to accept defeat gracefully, attempted one final assertion of control. You've had your victory, Knox. But remember, you've been gone 7 years. We've been raising your children. That bond doesn't disappear because of some paperwork and dramatic revelations. Liam's expression remained neutral. You're right. Which is why the final decision remains with Audrey and Cooper. He turned to his children. You've heard and seen everything. You've had time to consider your options. The choice of where and with whom you live going forward is yours alone. Diana's confidence faltered. They're minors. Legally, I've prepared emancipation documents for both. Should they choose that path, Liam interrupted. The family court judge who reviewed the evidence of your manipulation was quite sympathetic to granting them decision-making authority. All eyes turned to the teenagers, who exchanged a silent glance before Audrey spoke for both. We need time, she said firmly, away from all of you, to sort through what's real and what isn't. Cooper nodded in agreement. We're going to stay with Grandma Jenkins for a while. Diana's mother, who had never approved of how her daughter had handled the separation, had evidently offered a neutral sanctuary. Liam accepted this with dignity. A wise decision. Take all the time you need. Within 2 hours, the property began to empty. Diana and Roland departed first, stone-faced and separate, their relationship already fracturing under the strain of mutual recrimination. Oscar and Walter followed shortly after, both avoiding eye contact with Liam as they entered their respective vehicles. The children were the last to leave, pausing to speak with Liam privately before their departure. Will you still be here? Cooper asked hesitantly. When we're ready to talk. I'll be wherever you need me to be, Liam promised. On your timeline, not mine. After they left, Liam stood on the lodge's deck overlooking the lake, experiencing not the satisfaction he had anticipated, but a complex mixture of vindication and loss. Mira joined him, the team's work now complete. Was it worth it? She asked. Liam considered the question carefully. They've been held accountable. They'll face consequences proportionate to their actions. The children know the truth. That doesn't answer my question, she noted. No, Liam admitted. It doesn't. The truth was more complicated than simple revenge could address. 7 years couldn't be reclaimed. Trust, once shattered, left permanent fractures even when repaired. The fantasy of a restored family had died the moment he'd seen the lack of recognition in his children's eyes. What remained was the future, uncertain but honest, built on truth rather than comforting lies. Have the property prepared for sale, Liam instructed Bernard when he called later that day. Its purpose has been served. Chapter 9. Ashes and Rebirth. 6 months passed before Liam Knox returned to Milwaukee. He had spent the interim traveling, not to conflict zones this time, but to places of personal significance. His childhood hometown in Oregon, the base in North Carolina where he'd first met Bernard during their Marine service, the small Caribbean island where he'd once promised himself he'd retire when his work was done. Through it all, he maintained minimal contact with the world he'd left behind. Bernard provided occasional updates on the consequences unfolding in his absence. Diana and Roland had separated, their relationship unable to withstand the financial collapse of Baxter Development and the public humiliation that followed. Roland had declared bankruptcy, his investors abandoning him after learning of his unethical financing methods. Oscar had sold his home to repay Liam and moved to Arizona, seeking a fresh start away from the reputation he'd earned. Walter had resigned from the Planning Commission amid a quiet ethics investigation, his standing in the community permanently diminished. The children had remained with Diana's mother, attending therapy and rebuilding their sense of reality after years of manipulation. They occasionally sent brief messages to Liam, not ready for direct contact, but maintaining a tenuous connection. When Liam finally returned to Milwaukee, it was to a luxury apartment downtown. Not the penthouse command center, but a simpler space overlooking the river. His revenge completed, he had no need for elaborate surveillance or strategic positioning. His first visitor was Bernard, arriving with the final accounting of Liam's financial empire, now secured against further attempts at misappropriation. You could retire comfortably, Bernard noted, reviewing the figures. Never work another day if you didn't want to. Liam shook his head. Idleness doesn't suit me. Then what's next? The question lingered between them, the true purpose of Liam's return still unspoken. "I've been offered a position with the International Infrastructure Coalition," Liam finally revealed, "overseeing rebuilding projects in regions recovering from natural disasters." Bernard raised an eyebrow. "Back to dangerous locations?" "Challenging ones," Liam corrected, "but with better accommodations than shipping containers." Before Bernard could respond, Liam's phone chimed with a message. He checked it, his expression revealing nothing. "Audrey and Cooper," he explained. "They want to meet." The following day, Liam sat at a quiet table in a neutral location, a bookstore cafe chosen by the teenagers. When they arrived, he was struck by how much they'd changed in 6 months. Both stood taller, their faces showing the maturity that comes from confronting difficult truths. "Thank you for coming," Liam greeted them, restraining the urge to embrace children who were still essentially strangers. "We've been watching the videos you gave us," Audrey began once they were seated, "and reading the letters." "There were so many," Cooper added quietly. "Mom said you only sent a few." Liam nodded, unsurprised. "What matters is that you have them now." For nearly 2 hours, they talked, tentatively at first, then with increasing openness. The teenagers shared their experiences since Lake Tahoe, the therapy that was helping them process years of manipulation, their cautious reconnection with Diana under their grandmother's watchful supervision. "Mom's different now," Audrey explained, "without Roland's influence. She's more like we remember from when we were little. Grandma makes her take responsibility," Cooper added with a hint of satisfaction. "No more lying." Liam listened without judgment, recognizing the children's need to rebuild a relationship with their mother despite her betrayal. "People can change when properly motivated," he acknowledged. As their conversation wound down, Cooper finally asked the question that had clearly been weighing on both teenagers' minds. "Are you staying in Milwaukee?" "My new position begins in 3 weeks," Liam explained. "It will involve international travel, but not like before. Shorter projects, regular returns to a home base." "Here," Audrey pressed. Liam studied his children carefully. "That depends partly on you. There's nothing keeping me in Milwaukee except the possibility of knowing you both." The siblings exchanged one of their communicative glances before Cooper responded. "We'd like that. To try at least. Then I'll establish my base here," Liam promised. "On your timeline, not mine." As they prepared to leave, Audrey hesitated before asking one final question. "Do you hate Mom for what she did?" Liam considered this carefully. "Hate requires continued investment in someone else's significance. Diana no longer holds that place in my life." "That's not really an answer," Cooper observed with surprising insight. "No," Liam acknowledged with a small smile. "It's not." The truth was more nuanced than he could express to his children. He didn't hate Diana. Hatred would imply ongoing emotional engagement. What he felt was something colder and more final, the complete excision of someone who had once been central to his existence. In the weeks that followed, Liam established a new rhythm to his life. He prepared for his upcoming position while creating space in his schedule for regular contact with Audrey and Cooper. They began with supervised visits, gradually progressing to day trips and eventually weekends at his apartment. Diana remained peripheral to this developing relationship, not directly oppositional, but maintaining cautious distance. The divorce settlement had left her financially secure but humbled, her social standing diminished by the revelations about her conduct. 2 days before Liam was scheduled to depart for his first international assignment, he received an unexpected visitor. Diana stood at his apartment door, her appearance markedly different from their last encounter. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect styling, replaced by simpler attire and a face that showed the strain of recent months. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its former confidence. Liam stepped aside wordlessly, allowing her entry but not offering refreshment. The gesture was clear. She was permitted presence but not hospitality. "The children tell me you're leaving again," Diana began, standing awkwardly in his minimalist living room. "A 2-week assessment in the Philippines," Liam confirmed, followed by regular returns to Milwaukee. Diana nodded, seemingly relieved. "That's good. For them. Why are you here, Diana?" She took a deep breath. to acknowledge what I did. Properly. Not under coercion or threat, but voluntarily. I don't need your acknowledgement, Liam replied coldly. The legal documents covered everything necessary. This isn't for you, Diana countered with unexpected directness. It's for me. My therapist says I can't move forward without taking full. For several minutes, she spoke without interruption, detailing her gradual slide from lonely wife to active conspirator, her initial rationalization that the children needed stability more than distant financial support, her eventual embrace of the freedom and wealth Liam's absence provided without the inconvenience of his participation. I rewrote our history to justify my choices, she concluded. Then I taught that false narrative to our children until they believed it completely. Throughout this confession, Liam's expression remained impassive. When Diana finally fell silent, he asked simply, "Is that all?" His coldness seemed to wound her more than anger would have. "You'll never forgive me, will you?" "No," Liam confirmed without hesitation. "Forgiveness implies a continued relationship. Ours ended the moment you taught our children I was nobody." Diana flinched but didn't disagree. "What about the children? How do we co-parent from this position?" "We don't," Liam stated flatly. "They're old enough to navigate relationships with each of us individually. I won't interfere with their connection to you unless you attempt to manipulate them again. And if I do," Liam's smile was chilling in its certainty, "then you'll discover that Lake Tahoe was merely a demonstration of my capabilities, not their limit." After Diana left, Liam stood at his window overlooking the river, reflecting on the symmetry of life cycles. 7 years ago, he had departed Milwaukee with absolute certainty that he was securing his family's future through sacrifice. Now he prepared to leave again, but with clearer vision about the nature of loyalty and betrayal. His phone chimed with a message from Cooper, confirming plans to see him off at the airport in 2 days. Another message followed from Audrey, sharing her latest college application essay for his feedback. These simple communications, trivial to most parents, represented a victory more meaningful than all the calculated revenge of Lake Tahoe. His children were choosing to rebuild a relationship with him, one honest interaction at a time. Liam Knox had returned from 7 years overseas to discover complete betrayal. He had engineered meticulous consequences for those who had wronged him. But in the ashes of his former life, something unexpected had emerged. The possibility of authentic connection unburdened by illusion. He would never forgive those who had betrayed him. That capacity had been burned away during long nights in shipping containers and dangerous days in conflict zones. But he had found something more valuable than forgiveness, the ability to build a future unencumbered by the weight of false expectations. As night fell over the city, Liam began packing for his upcoming trip, placing a framed photo of Audrey and Cooper on his bedside table. Not the outdated image he'd carried overseas for 7 years, but a recent picture from their first unsupervised weekend together. In it, their smiles were tentative but genuine, their eyes clear with the relief of finally living in truth. That, he decided, was the most effective revenge of all. Not the destruction of those who had wronged him, but the reclamation of what truly mattered from the wreckage they had created. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Broken Trust. Edgar Whitaker had learned to trust his instincts during 12 years in military intelligence before transitioning to corporate security consulting. Those instincts were screaming now as he sat in the sterile waiting room of St. Catherine's Medical Center, watching the second hand tick around the clock for the 3rd time that hour. His daughter Molly had been here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of watching his vibrant 16-year-old girl fade into the pale, ghost-occupying bed 4B. The doctors called it a mysterious autoimmune disorder, something that appeared suddenly and defied easy diagnosis. They'd run every test imaginable, pumped her full of medications, and still she deteriorated. Edgar ran a hand through his dark hair, now threaded with silver at 42. His wife, Natalie, sat across from him, scrolling through her phone with barely concealed impatience. They'd been married for 18 years, but the past 6 months had revealed a stranger where his partner used to be. Late nights at book club, whispered phone calls, a new obsession with her appearance. That, his son Kenneth, 14 years old and sharp as a tack, dropped into the seat beside him. The boy had his mother's light hair, but Edgar's steel-gray eyes that had seen too much lately. "Yeah, buddy. Can we talk?" Outside, Kenneth's voice carried an edge Edgar recognized from interrogations. Someone holding dangerous information. They stepped into the corridor, away from Natalie's distracted gaze. Kenneth glanced both ways before speaking in a low voice. "I've been watching Mom." Edgar's stomach tightened. "Kenneth, no, listen. She's been acting weird since before Molly got sick. Really weird. I followed her last Thursday when she said she was going to Aunt Susan's." Kenneth pulled out his phone, showing photos of Natalie entering a downtown apartment building. She was in there for 3 hours. And look at this. The next photo showed Natalie leaving with a man. Edgar recognized him immediately. Douglas Bean, an investment banker who tried to poach Edgar's firm's biggest client 2 years ago. The attempt had failed, and Bean had blamed Edgar publicly, damaging his reputation in their industry. "There's more," Kenneth said. "I've heard her on the phone late at night, talking about when this is over and finally being free. Dad, I think Mr. Whitaker." A nurse appeared, young, blonde, name tag reading Bridget Dorsey. Edgar had seen her around Molly's room frequently. "Your daughter's awake. You can visit now." Edgar studied her face, his training kicking in. Bridget's smile didn't reach her eyes, and she avoided direct eye contact. Her left hand trembled slightly before she clasped both hands behind her back. "Thank you," Edgar said evenly. "We'll be right there." As Bridget walked away, Kenneth whispered, "That nurse? She's been weird too. Always shooing me out of the room when she comes to give Molly her medications. And yesterday, I saw her talking to Mom in the parking lot." Edgar's mind raced, connecting dots he desperately didn't want to connect. "Kenneth, I need you to do something for me. I need you to stay alert, keep your observations to yourself, and most importantly, act normal around your mother. Can you do that?" Kenneth nodded, understanding the gravity in his father's tone. They returned to collect Natalie, who barely looked up from her phone. "Finally, I have a meeting in an hour." On Sunday, Edgar asked mildly, "Estate planning seminar. For the business." Natalie's lie came smooth and practiced. Edgar had built his career on detecting deception. Every micro-expression, every vocal tell screamed dishonesty. But he smiled and nodded, filing it away. Molly's room felt colder than the rest of the hospital. His daughter lay propped against pillows, her once bright green eyes dulled and sunken. At 16, she should have been worrying about college applications and weekend plans, not whether she'd survive the week. "Hey, Pumpkin," Edgar said softly, taking her hand. It felt fragile as bird bones. "Dad." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Feeling weird today. Dizzy. Nauseous." "I'll get the nurse," Natalie said quickly, already moving toward the door. "No." Molly's grip tightened on Edgar's hand. "Not her. The other one. Please." Natalie froze. "Sweetie, Nurse Bridget knows your case." "I don't like her," Molly said with more strength than she'd shown in days. "She makes me feel worse." Edgar filed that away too. Molly had always been intuitive, reading people with an accuracy that surprised him. If his daughter's instincts matched his son's observations, matched his own suspicions. "I'll find someone else," Edgar said firmly, catching Natalie's flash of anger before she smoothed her expression. "I'll do it. You stay with her." Natalie left with an edge to her stride. Kenneth moved to Molly's other side, taking her free hand. Brother and sister shared a look Edgar couldn't quite read, some silent communication. "Dad," Molly whispered when Natalie was gone, "I need to tell you something. I've been keeping track. I feel worse after Nurse Bridget gives me medications. Every single time. The other nurses, I feel okay or even a little better. But her? Within an hour, I'm throwing up or dizzy or my heart races. Edgar's blood ran cold. Why didn't you say something before? I thought I was being paranoid. But Kenneth told me to start writing it down, and the pattern's clear. She gestured weakly to a notebook on her bedside table. It's all there. Edgar flipped through it. Meticulous notes in Molly's shaky handwriting. Times, medications, reactions. A damning timeline. A different nurse entered. Older, professional, name tag reading Sally Walker. Let's check those vitals, honey. As Sally worked, Edgar stepped into the hallway and made a call to an old contact from his intelligence days. Philip Field, came the gruff answer. Phil, it's Edgar Whitaker. I need a favor. Discreet, urgent, and completely off-book. I'm listening. I need comprehensive background checks on 3 people. And I need to know if any of them have connections to each other beyond the obvious. Edgar rattled off names. Natalie Mann Whitaker, Douglas Bean, Bridget Dorsey. How deep? Mariana, trench deep. Financial records, communications, associates, everything. And Phil, I'm on a clock. My daughter's life might depend on it. 48 hours. I'll send encrypted. Edgar ended the call as Natalie returned. Her expression smooth, but her eyes calculating. They're sending someone else, she said. Though I don't know what you're all being so dramatic about. Just want the best care for our daughter, Edgar replied, watching her carefully. That night, after they'd left the hospital, Edgar waited until Natalie was asleep before slipping into his home office. He pulled up security footage from the hidden cameras he'd installed months ago during a particularly sensitive case he'd been consulting on. He'd never removed them. What he saw made his blood boil. Footage from 2 weeks ago. Natalie on the phone, pacing the kitchen. She's in the hospital now. Yes, it's working. No one's suspects. Once she's gone, we move on to phase 2. I can't do this much longer, Douglas. I need you. More footage. Natalie meeting with Bridget Dorsey at a coffee shop, sliding an envelope across the table. Bridget counting cash, nodding. Edgar's hands shook as he compiled the recordings, his mind refusing to fully accept what his eyes confirmed. His wife, the mother of his children, was involved in harming their own daughter. But why? That was the piece that didn't fit. They were comfortable financially, not wealthy, but secure. Unless he pulled up their insurance policies. There was a policy on Molly he'd forgotten about, taken out when she was born. But someone had increased it 8 months ago to $5 million. Edgar's signature was on the documents, but he'd never signed them. Forgery. And there was more. A life insurance policy on Edgar himself, recently increased to $10 million. The pattern crystallized with brutal clarity. Kill Molly, devastate Edgar, wait for him to spiral into grief, then arrange an accident or suicide. Natalie and Douglas walk away with $15 million in each other. Edgar sat back, the rage in his chest warring with the ice-cold calculation he'd learned in the field. They'd made a mistake targeting his family. They made a bigger mistake underestimating him. He wouldn't just stop them. He'd make them pay in ways they couldn't imagine. But first, he needed more information. He needed proof that would be ironclad. And he needed to protect his children. Edgar opened a secure communication channel and began typing messages to old contacts. By dawn, he'd have resources, safe houses, and a plan. Kenneth found him in the office at 6 a.m., Edgar's eyes red from lack of sleep, but burning with purpose. You know, don't you? The boy asked quietly. Yeah, buddy. I know. What are we going to do? Edgar looked at his son. Too young to carry this weight, but already carrying it anyway. We're going to save your sister. And then we're going to make sure the people who did this to her regret ever being born. Kenneth's jaw set in a way that reminded Edgar of himself at that age. Tell me what you need me to do. Chapter 2. The Curtain. The next day, Sunday, Edgar drove them back to St. Catharines with Natalie in the passenger seat, radiating impatience. Kenneth sat behind them, silent and watchful. Edgar had briefed him that morning in hushed tones. Act normal. Observe everything. And if anything went wrong, Kenneth had a panic word that would trigger Edgar's backup plan. I really can't stay long, Natalie said for the 3rd time. The seminar won't start without you. I'm sure, Edgar said pleasantly. He'd already confirmed through a contact that no estate planning seminar existed anywhere in the city today. Another lie. St. Catherine's lobby bustled with Sunday visitors. Edgar noted security cameras, exit points, staff movements, old habits clicking into automatic assessment mode. Bridget Dorsey stood at the nurse's station on Molly's floor, and Edgar caught the brief glance she exchanged with Natalie. "I'll grab coffee," Natalie announced abruptly. "Want anything?" "We're good," Edgar said, watching her retreat toward the elevators with unusual speed. He and Kenneth entered Molly's room. She looked worse than yesterday, skin ashen, breathing shallow. Rage simmered in Edgar's gut, but he forced it down. Emotion was the enemy of clear thinking. "Hey, Pumpkin." "Dad." Molly's smile was weak, but genuine. "Kenneth, you guys didn't have to come so early. Want to spend time with our favorite girl?" Kenneth said, moving to her bedside. Edgar set down the bag he'd brought, ostensibly containing books and magazines, actually containing a high-grade recording device and a compact camera. While Kenneth distracted Molly with stories about his week, Edgar palmed the camera and positioned it on the windowsill, aimed at Molly's bed. The angle captured her four-line and medication port perfectly. His phone buzzed. "Philip Field. Initial data drop in your secure folder. You were right to be concerned. Details are ugly." Edgar's jaw clenched. He'd review it later, but the message confirmed his worst suspicions. "Dad!" Molly's voice pulled him back. "You okay? You look intense." "Just tired, sweetheart. Work's been demanding." He took her hand, careful not to disturb the four. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, actually. They changed my medication protocol this morning. Different nurse, Nurse Sally. She said something about reviewing my chart and noticing some interactions that didn't make sense." Edgar's estimation of Sally Walker rose several notches. "That's good news." "Yeah, but..." Molly glanced at the door, lowering her voice. Nurse Bridget was really angry about it. "I heard her arguing with Sally in the hallway. She said Sally was overstepping, that she knew my case better." Before Edgar could respond, Kenneth suddenly stood, moving to the window. His posture changed, tense, alert. "Dad," Kenneth said quietly, not turning around. "That car in the parking lot. Gray sedan, third row. That's the same car that's been parked on our street the last 2 nights." Edgar moved to look, his training screaming warnings. Gray Chevrolet, tinted windows, driver still inside. He pulled out his phone and snapped photos, zooming in on the license plate. "Kenneth," Edgar said carefully, "take your sister's notebook, the one where she's been tracking her symptoms. Put it in your backpack. Right now." The boy moved quickly, understanding the urgency. As he did, footsteps approached in the hallway. 2 sets, one in soft-soled shoes, one in heels. "Dad," Kenneth whispered urgently. "Hide behind the curtain." "What?" Edgar asked, even as his instincts screamed agreement. "Just do it quick." Kenneth's voice trembled with a fear Edgar had never heard from his composed son. Edgar didn't hesitate further. Years of training overrode the questions. He slipped behind the privacy curtain just as the door opened, positioning himself where he could see through a small gap in the fabric. Bridget Dorsey entered, followed by Natalie. Neither noticed the camera on the windowsill or Edgar's absence, their attention fixed on Molly and Kenneth. "Kenneth, honey," Natalie said with forced sweetness, "why don't you go get soda? Let me spend some time alone with your sister." "I'm okay here, Mom," Kenneth said, and Edgar heard the subtle strength in his son's voice. The boy was covering, giving Edgar time. "Kenneth," Natalie's tone sharpened. "Now." "It's okay," Molly said softly. "I could use a Sprite anyway." "Thanks, Ken." Kenneth hesitated, then nodded, catching Molly's eye in what Edgar recognized as sibling code. The boy left, but Edgar knew he wouldn't go far. The moment the door closed, Natalie's expression shifted. The mask of concern dropped, replaced by cold calculation. "Bridget, we have a problem." "I know," the nurse said, moving to check Molly's for. "That interfering bitch Sally Walker changed the medication orders. I can't just switch them back without raising flags." Edgar's hands clenched into fists behind the curtain. Every word was being recorded by the device in his bag, every image captured by the hidden camera. "Then find another way," Natalie hissed. "Douglas is getting impatient." He says if this takes much longer, the whole plan falls apart. Edgar's been asking questions about the insurance policies. Molly's eyes widened in her pale face. Mom? What are you? Baby, Natalie said without warmth. Don't worry about adult things. Just rest. Bridget prepared a syringe from her pocket, not the medication card. Edgar's rage crystallized into ice-cold focus. They were going to poison his daughter right in front of him. This should do it, Bridget said quietly. Within 12 hours, her organs will start failing. It'll look like a sudden decline. Natural causes, given her condition. Good, Natalie said. And afterward, I'll need the second half of the payment. Cash, like we agreed. And then I'm disappearing for a while. My cousin has a place in Montana. Edgar had heard enough. He burst from behind the curtain, phone in hand, camera recording. I wouldn't make any travel plans if I were you. Bridget jumped, the syringe clattering to the floor. Natalie's face drained of color, shock and fury warring in her expression. Edgar, what? You can't. Can't what? Can't record my wife and a nurse discussing how to murder my daughter. Edgar's voice was deadly calm, the tone he'd used in interrogations that made hardened criminals crack. Can't protect my child from the people who are supposed to love her? Molly made a small sound of distress. Edgar moved to her bedside, placing himself between her and the two women, never taking his eyes off them. It's not what it sounds like, Natalie tried, her mind visibly racing for an explanation. We were just discussing which poison to use, planning your payment schedule, talking about Douglas getting impatient. Edgar's smile was a predator's expression. I've got it all recorded, Natalie. Every word. And the cameras I installed caught your meeting with Bridget 2 weeks ago. The envelope of cash. All of it. Bridget lunged for the door, but it opened before she reached it. 2 security guards entered, followed by Kenneth and, to Edgar's satisfaction, 2 police officers. That was faster than expected, Edgar said to the lead officer, a sharp-eyed woman named Officer Rhonda Hoffman, whom he'd worked with on corporate cases. We were already in the building on another matter, Hoffman said. Your boy flagged us down and said there was an emergency. Explained enough that we came running. This is harassment, Natalie shrieked. He can't prove anything. This is entrapment. Actually, Hoffman said, taking the syringe from the floor with gloved hands, unauthorized medication administration is a crime. And if what your son told me is true, we'll be testing this for controlled substances. She looked at Edgar. You have recordings? Video and audio, plus a paper trail that goes back months. Edgar gestured to his phone. I'll turn over everything to the proper authorities. But first, I want my daughter examined by doctors who aren't influenced by anyone in this room. As if summoned, Sally Walker appeared with 2 other nurses and a Dr. Edgar didn't recognize, an older man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Dr. Clifford Haynes, the man introduced himself, head of internal medicine. Nurse Walker brought some concerning irregularities to my attention this morning. With your permission, Mr. Whitaker, I'd like to run a full toxicology panel on your daughter and review her entire treatment history. Please, Edgar said, the weight of 2 weeks of fear finally showing in his voice. As hospital staff moved to transfer Molly to a different room for examination, as police read Bridget her rights, as Natalie stood frozen in the wreckage of her scheme, Kenneth slipped to Edgar's side. I call Grandpa too, the boy whispered. Figured we'd need a lawyer. Edgar put an arm around his son's shoulders. Smart thinking, buddy. Natalie finally found her voice. You'll regret this, Edgar. Douglas will. Douglas Bean is currently being questioned by federal investigators about insurance fraud and attempted murder for hire. Officer Hoffman interrupted, checking her phone. He was picked up 20 minutes ago. Seems someone provided them with extensive documentation of his activities. Edgar met Natalie's eyes and saw the moment she understood. This hadn't been a desperate scramble to save his daughter. This had been a planned operation, executed with the precision of his former life. How long have you known? Natalie asked, her voice hollow. Long enough to make sure you'd never hurt our children again, Edgar said quietly. Long enough to ensure you'll spend the next several decades contemplating your choices from a cell. As officers escorted Natalie and Bridget away, Molly called out weakly, Dad? He was at her side instantly. I'm here, Pumpkin. I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to believe Mom could. Tears slid down her pale cheeks. I know. Neither did I. Edgar brushed hair from her forehead. But you're safe now. Both of you are safe. And I promise you, they'll never touch you again. Dr. Haynes approached. Mr. Whitaker, I need to be honest with you. If what we suspect is true, your daughter has been systematically poisoned for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. The next few days will be critical as we flush the toxins and support her organs through recovery. Whatever she needs, Edgar said. Cost doesn't matter. Just save her. We'll do everything we can. Haynes paused. Your son's observations may have saved her life. Another week of this dosing, and the damage might have been irreversible. Edgar pulled Kenneth close, the boy's composure finally cracking as he buried his face in his father's shoulder. I was so scared, Dad. What if I was wrong? What if I got Mom in trouble for nothing? You trusted your instincts, and you protected your sister. That's all that matters. Edgar held his son as the boy shook with delayed shock and relief. As hospital staff wheeled Molly to the secure wing, as police sealed off the crime scene, as the full weight of the day's events settled over them, Edgar Whitaker made a silent vow. This was just the beginning. He protected his children, yes. But justice, real justice, was still to come. Chapter 3. Depths. The safe house was a modest 2-story in a quiet suburb, owned by one of Edgar's former military contacts who asked no questions. 48 hours after the hospital confrontation, Edgar sat at a makeshift command center in the dining room, 3 laptops running, surrounded by printouts and evidence folders. Kenneth slept upstairs, finally getting rest after 2 days of giving statements to police and protective services. Molly remained hospitalized, but was showing improvement. The toxicology report confirmed chronic arsenic poisoning mixed with pharmaceutical-grade sedatives. Dr. Haynes estimated full recovery would take months, but the prognosis was optimistic. Edgar's phone buzzed. Philip Field calling. Talk to me, Phil. You sitting down? This is bigger than we thought. Papers rustled in the background. Douglas Bean is in deep financial trouble, gambling debts to some very unpleasant people. We're talking $2 million owed to a loan shark with Russian mob connections. His investment firm is a shell game. He's been running a minor Ponzi scheme to stay afloat. That explains his desperation, Edgar said, adding notes to his growing file. It gets better. Bridget Dorsey? She had a brother, Gerard Dorsey. Died 4 years ago in an industrial accident at a construction site. Your company did the security audit that found multiple violations. The site owner was one of your clients. Edgar's memory clicked. The Morrison case. We found evidence of negligent safety standards. They settled out of court, but 3 workers died. Gerard Dorsey was one of them. Bridget blamed your firm for not finding the problem sooner. When Natalie approached her about helping with Molly, she saw it as getting paid and getting revenge. The pieces fitted together with ugly precision. And Natalie? That's where it gets interesting. Natalie Mann came from money. Her family owned Mann Properties, a real estate development company. But her father, Theodore Mann, lost everything in the 2008 crash. Killed himself in 2009. Natalie's been living above her means for years, credit cards maxed out, taking loans from friends. She's been waiting for her mother to die. The woman has a trust fund worth $8 million. But her mother's healthy, Edgar said slowly. Could live another 20 years. Exactly. Natalie needed money now. She met Douglas at a charity gala 6 months ago. They started the affair, realized they shared financial desperation, and hatched this plan. Kill Molly to get the insurance payout, use grief to destabilize you, then arrange your suicide a few months later. They'd walk away with enough to solve both their problems. Edgar felt cold fury settle in his chest. They really thought they could kill both my children and me? Kenneth wasn't in the original plan, but I found communications suggesting they decided he was too observant. They were going to make it look like a grief-stricken father who took his son with him. Murder-suicide. Douglas even had a contact at the medical examiner's office who'd rubber-stamp the findings. Names, Edgar said quietly. I want every name. Already compiled. Sending you the encrypted file now. Phil paused. Edgar, officially? You've got enough to put them all away. Natalie's looking at attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, 30 to life minimum. Douglas gets similar. Bridget might cut a deal, but she's still looking at 20 years. And unofficially, these people tried to murder your daughter and frame you. The law will punish them. But if you wanted to ensure they understand the full consequences of their actions, I didn't hear anything, and I certainly didn't provide you with certain information in this file. Edgar opened the encrypted data. What he saw made him smile, a cold, calculated expression that would have terrified anyone who knew what it meant. Phil, you're a good friend. I'm a father too. What they did. Phil's voice roughened. You do what you need to do. My conscience is clear. After hanging up, Edgar dove into the data. Douglas Bean's gambling debts were held by Greg Maynard, a ruthless operator with connections to Eastern European organized crime. Maynard didn't forgive debts. He collected them in blood if cash wasn't forthcoming. Bridget Dorsey had family in Montana, yes, but she also had an ex-husband, Barry Peterson, who'd been looking for her for 2 years over unpaid child support. Peterson was a long-haul trucker with a temper and outstanding warrants for assault. Natalie's debts included loans from people Edgar recognized, including Carlton Suarez, a venture capitalist with a reputation for using legal pressure and social destruction when payments lapsed. Edgar began to formulate a plan that went far beyond legal justice. The courts would put them in prison, yes, but Edgar would ensure they arrived there as broken as they'd tried to leave his daughter. Over the next week, Edgar moved with surgical precision. First, Douglas Bean. Edgar anonymously provided Greg Maynard with detailed information about Douglas's whereabouts, assets, and the fact that he was about to be imprisoned, meaning Maynard's money would be lost forever unless he collected immediately. Maynard's people found Douglas in his expensive downtown apartment. They didn't kill him. Maynard was too smart for that. But they took everything. They emptied his bank accounts using access codes Maynard's hackers extracted. They seized his car, his watches, his electronics. They visited his office and collected files that implicated Douglas in financial crimes beyond what the police knew about. Douglas's lawyer arrived at their meeting to find his client penniless, terrified, and now facing federal charges for securities fraud in addition to attempted murder. Second, Bridget Dorsey. Edgar made 2 calls, one to Barry Peterson's parole officer, providing information about Bridget's location and assets, and one to the Montana State Board of Nursing, detailing Bridget's plan to practice under a false identity in their state. Peterson showed up at Bridget's holding facility during a court hearing, creating a scene that made news. The humiliation was public and complete. Worse, the nursing board's investigation revealed Bridget had falsified credentials on past jobs, opening her up to additional charges. Third, and most personally, Natalie. Edgar spent 3 days compiling every debt, every lie, every person Natalie had wronged. Then he reached out to Carlton Suarez. Mr. Suarez, this is Edgar Whitaker. My wife has borrowed substantially from you, hasn't she? Suarez's voice was smooth but interested. Mrs. Whitaker owes me approximately $400,000, yes. I understand she's recently been arrested. She has, for trying to murder our daughter to collect insurance money. Money she promised to various creditors. Edgar let that sink in. I'm divorcing her, obviously. I wanted you to know that I'll be ensuring she has no access to any assets. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, all frozen or transferred to a trust for my children. I appreciate the notification, Mr. Whitaker. There's more. Natalie's mother, Jacqueline Mann, has a trust fund worth $8 million. Natalie's been the sole beneficiary. I've arranged for Mrs. Mann to be informed of her daughter's crimes. She's a traditional woman, deeply religious. I suspect she'll be changing her will. That would be unfortunate for your wife. Indeed, I thought you might want to file claims against her estate before she's sentenced. The publicity of her trial will make her toxic to any potential financial recovery. She'll spend decades in prison, penniless, knowing she destroyed her family and gained nothing. Suarez chuckled darkly. You're a thorough man, Mr. Whitaker. I protect what's mine, Mr. Suarez, and I ensure those who threaten it understand the consequences. But Edgar's most devastating move came through Natalie's mother. Jacqueline Mann was 72, dignified, and had always disapproved of Edgar, seeing him as beneath her daughter. Edgar visited her at her estate, bringing evidence of what Natalie had planned. "You're lying," Jacqueline said, but her hands trembled as she read the police reports, the recordings, the evidence of her daughter's affair and conspiracy. "I wish I were, Mrs. Mann. But Natalie tried to murder Molly, your granddaughter, for insurance money. Money she needed because she's in debt up to her neck from trying to maintain appearances." Jacqueline's face crumbled. "All this time I thought, I blamed you for her stress, for her unhappiness. She made her choices, but you have a choice too." Edgar leaned forward. "Your will currently makes Natalie the primary beneficiary. If you leave that intact, her creditors will seize it all the moment she's sentenced. Or you could change it now. Put it in trust for Kenneth and Molly. Ensure your money protects the grandchildren Natalie tried to destroy." "What about Natalie? If she has nothing, then she'll spend her life in prison knowing she destroyed everything. Her family, her future, her inheritance for a plan that failed." Edgar's voice was steel. "She'll have decades to contemplate what she did to her own daughter." Jacqueline Mann changed her will that week. Edgar made sure Natalie knew about it during her next court appearance. 2 weeks after the hospital confrontation, Edgar stood in Molly's new hospital room, this one bright with flowers and get-well cards. His daughter sat up in bed, color returning to her cheeks, eating solid food for the first time in a month. "Dad," she said, "I heard you've been busy, just tying up loose ends, pumpkin. The news says Mom lost everything. Her lawyer dropped her. She can't make bail. Grandma disowned her." Molly looked conflicted. "Part of me feels bad. She's still my mom." Edgar sat on the bed's edge, taking her hand. "She tried to kill you, sweetheart. She was willing to murder both you and me for money. Feeling conflicted is natural. It means you have empathy. But she made her choices. I know. It hurts. It will for a while. That's okay." He squeezed her hand gently. "But you're alive. Kenneth's safe. We're together. That's what matters." Kenneth appeared in the doorway, carrying a bag from Molly's favorite restaurant. "Smuggled contraband. Don't tell the nurses." As his children laughed together, Edgar felt the tight knot in his chest loosen slightly. They'd recover. It would take time, therapy, and patience, but they'd survive this. That night, Edgar received a final call from Officer Hoffman. "Thought you'd want to know. Douglas Bean's federal charges are ironclad. He's cooperating against Bridget and Natalie, but it won't help much. They're all looking at maximum sentences." "Good. Also, we found evidence of the conspiracy going back 8 months. They'd planned this meticulously. If your son hadn't caught on." "I know." Hoffman paused. "Edgar, off the record, I've seen what you did. The financial pressure, the public exposure, the destroyed relationships. It's impressive. Brutal, but impressive." "I have no idea what you mean, officer." "Of course you don't." He could hear the smile in her voice. "Just wanted to say your daughter's lucky to have you." After hanging up, Edgar stood at the window of the safe house, looking out at the quiet street. 3 people had tried to destroy his family. The law would imprison them. But Edgar had ensured they'd arrive at those prison cells with nothing. No money, no hope, no future beyond bars. Some might call it revenge. Edgar called it justice. And he wasn't done yet. Chapter 4. Reconstruction. 3 months later, Edgar sat in a windowless conference room at the law offices of Meyer and Associates, facing his soon-to-be ex-wife across a mahogany table. Natalie had aged a decade, prison orange washing out her complexion, no makeup to hide the dark circles, hair pulled back in a messy knot. Her lawyer, a public defender named Lowell Crosby who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, shuffled papers nervously. Edgar's attorney, Mario Pearson, a shark in a 3-piece suit, smiled pleasantly. "Shall we begin?" Natalie's eyes held a mixture of hatred and desperation. "I want to see my children." "Your children," Edgar said calmly, "have made it clear they don't wish to see you." Kenneth provided a statement to the court. Molly did the same. "Both are in therapy dealing with the trauma you inflicted. I'm their mother. You're a woman who tried to murder their sister." Mario's voice was clinical. "The court has already granted Mr. Whitaker full custody with a permanent restraining order. You have no parental rights. This meeting is purely about asset division. Crosby cleared his throat. My client has debts exceeding $2 million. She needs. Your client is entitled to nothing, Mario interrupted, sliding documents across the table. The prenuptial agreement clearly states that in cases of infidelity or criminal activity, the offending spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets. Mrs. Whitaker committed adultery and attempted murder. She gets 0. That prenup was signed 18 years ago. The circumstances are irrelevant. The law is clear. Mario's smile widened. Furthermore, Mr. Whitaker is filing for damages in civil court, emotional distress, attempted murder of a minor, fraud. We're seeking $25 million. Natalie laughed bitterly. I don't have $25 million. I don't have anything. We know, Edgar said quietly. But we'll have a judgment on record. Every penny you ever earn for the rest of your life, if you live long enough to get out of prison, belongs to your children as compensation for what you did to them. This is insane. Edgar, please. Please what? Edgar leaned forward, his voice dropping to the tone that had once made terrorists confess. Please forgive you for slowly poisoning our daughter. Please overlook that you plan to make it look like I murdered Kenneth and myself in a grief-induced psychotic break. Please pretend you didn't spend months fucking Douglas Bean while plotting our deaths. Natalie flinched. Crosby raised a hand. Mr. Whitaker, that's true. All of it demonstrably, provably true. Edgar sat back. Your client is going to prison for 30 years minimum. She'll be 74 when she's eligible for parole if she lives that long. She has no assets, no family support, and thanks to the media coverage, she's universally despised. This meeting is a formality. Sign the papers or don't. Either way, she gets nothing. Natalie's hands shook as she grabbed the pen. I hate you. You tried to kill our daughter, Edgar replied evenly. Your hatred is inconsequential. She signed, each stroke vicious. When finished, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. How's Molly? Really? She's recovering. Thanks to Dr. Haynes and months of chelation therapy, her organ function is returning to normal. She'll start her senior year in the fall. Can I at least write to her? The restraining order prohibits all contact, direct or indirect. Edgar stood, gathering his briefcase. You made your choice, Natalie. Now you live with it. What about Douglas? She asked suddenly. What did you do to him? Edgar paused at the door. Douglas Bean is currently in federal custody, penniless, facing charges that will keep him imprisoned until he's 80. His gambling creditors left him with broken ribs and a collapsed lung before the feds took him in. He's cooperating against you to try to reduce his sentence. Did your lawyer mention that? The color drained from Natalie's face. He wouldn't. He gave them everything. The insurance fraud, the affair, how you recruited Bridget. He's trying to paint himself as your dupe. Edgar smiled coldly. It won't work. You're both going down. But you'll go down alone, betrayed by the man you destroyed your family for. He left her crying at the table. Outside, Mario clapped him on the shoulder. Brutal, but effective. The civil suit will proceed regardless of her cooperation. We'll garnish any prison wages, any future earnings. She'll die in debt to your children. Good, Edgar said. What about Bridget Dorsey? She took a plea deal, 20 years, eligible for parole in 12. She gave up her accomplice at the medical examiner's office. That's been helpful for other prosecutions. Edgar nodded, satisfied. The legal machinery was grinding his enemies to dust, exactly as planned. His phone rang. Kenneth, calling from school. Dad? Just got out of class. How'd it go? It's done. The divorce is final. She has nothing. Good. Kenneth's voice was harder than a 14-year-old should be. Is Grandma still coming for dinner? She is. Think you and Molly can handle it. We'll manage. Molly's actually excited. She likes Grandma now. Edgar smiled despite himself. Jacqueline Mann's transformation had been remarkable. Confronted with her daughter's monstrous acts, she'd thrown herself into supporting her grandchildren. Weekly visits to Molly during her hospitalization, generous gifts, genuine contrition for her years of coldness toward Edgar. I'll pick up Molly from physical therapy and meet you at home. Love you, buddy. Love you too, Dad. That evening, around a dinner table in the home Edgar now owned outright, 3 generations gathered. Jacqueline Mann had aged but softened, her aristocratic features gentler than Edgar remembered. "Molly, dear, you look wonderful," Jacqueline said, and meant it. "Thanks, Grandma. I feel good. Dr. Haynes says I'm ahead of schedule." Molly's smile was genuine, though shadows still lingered in her eyes. "And Kenneth, your report card, straight A's. I'm so proud of both of you." Over roasted chicken and vegetables, they talked about school, college plans, summer vacation possibilities. Normal things. Healing things. Later, after the kids went upstairs, Jacqueline lingered with Edgar over coffee. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "For years, I blamed you for Natalie's unhappiness. I thought you weren't good enough, weren't providing adequately. I was blind to who my daughter really was. You loved her. That's natural. I enabled her. I gave her money when she overspent. I made excuses when she was cruel to you. I taught her that appearances mattered more than character." Jacqueline's voice cracked, and it turned her into someone who could hurt her own child. "Natalie made her choices," Edgar said gently. "You can't blame yourself for that. I can blame myself for not seeing it sooner, for not being a better grandmother when Molly and Kenneth needed it." She met his eyes. "But I'm here now. However long I've left, I want to be part of their lives. Truly part of it. They'd like that. So would I." Jacqueline pulled out an envelope. "I've updated my trust documents. Kenneth and Molly are the primary beneficiaries, with you as trustee until they're 30. But there's also a provision, $2 million set aside for their therapy, education, anything they need to recover from this." "Mrs. Mann, that's too generous." "It's Jacqueline. And it's not generous. It's restitution. My daughter hurt them. My money will help heal them." Her aristocratic mask cracked, revealing grief. "It's the only thing I can do." Edgar reached across the table, taking her hand. "Thank you." After she left, Edgar found Molly in her room, surrounded by college brochures. At 17, she had a birthday in the hospital. She was planning futures again. A good sign. "Dad, what do you think about Northwestern? Good psychology program, not too far from home." Edgar sat on her bed, looking at the materials. "I think you should choose wherever makes you happy. Money's not an issue. Between the settlement, Grandma's trust, and my work, you can go anywhere. It feels weird planning for college when I almost—" She trailed off. "When you almost died?" Molly nodded, tears welling up. "Sometimes I wake up, and I can still taste the medication. Still feel that dizzy, sick feeling. And I think about Mom being the one who did it, and I just—" Edgar pulled her into a hug as she cried. "I know, Pumpkin. It's okay to grieve what you lost, the mother you thought you had. I hate that I miss her sometimes. After what she did, I shouldn't. You can miss the idea of her, the mother she should have been. That's not wrong." He stroked her hair. "But the woman who did this to you, she doesn't deserve your grief." They sat together until her tears subsided. Then Molly pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Dr. Stevens, my therapist, says I'm making good progress. She thinks the nightmares will fade with time." "Do you like Dr. Stevens?" "Yeah. She doesn't push, doesn't judge. Just listens." Molly managed a small smile. "She says I'm one of the strongest people she's worked with." "You are. You survived something that would break most people. And you're still here, planning your future, staying close with your brother. That's incredible strength. I learned from you." Molly looked at him seriously. "The way you handled everything, finding out, protecting us, making sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. You didn't fall apart. You just handled it." "Almost did fall apart," Edgar admitted. "When I realized what your mother was doing, I wanted to burn the world down. But I had you and Kenneth to protect. That focused me. You did more than protect us. You destroyed them." There was satisfaction in Molly's voice, and Edgar couldn't find it in himself to discourage it. "Mom has nothing. Douglas has nothing. Bridget's in prison. They lost everything. They took my daughter from me for 2 weeks. They traumatized my son. They tried to kill you both." Edgar's voice hardened. Destroying them was a revenge. It was justice. Molly hugged him again. "I'm glad you're my dad." Kenneth appeared in the doorway. "Family meeting in Molly's room? Should I be worried?" "Come here, buddy." Edgar made room on the bed. Kenneth flopped down between them. So I've been thinking, this summer, before Molly goes to college, we should take a trip. Somewhere awesome. Make good memories to replace the bad ones. Where were you thinking? Edgar asked. Alaska. Cruise, fishing, hiking. All that outdoor stuff we never do. Kenneth grinned. Plus, grizzly bears. How cool would that be? Molly laughed. The first genuine laugh Edgar had heard from her in weeks. You just want to see bears. Obviously. Come on, Dad. Say yes. Edgar looked at his children, scarred but healing, hurt but hopeful. Alaska it is. They spent the evening planning an adventure, voices filling the house with life again. Later, after the kids were asleep, Edgar sat in his office reviewing financial statements. The civil suit against Natalie would proceed automatically. Douglas's assets had been seized by federal authorities. Bridget's plea deal included restitution payments that would take her lifetime to pay off. But Edgar's real victory wasn't financial. It was sitting upstairs in their bedrooms, two children who survived and were learning to thrive again. His computer dinged with a secure message from Philip Field. Final background check complete. No remaining conspirators. You got them all. Edgar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he opened a new folder labeled Future Planning. Because while justice had been served, vigilance never ended. He'd failed to see Natalie's betrayal until almost too late. That would never happen again. He began compiling resources, therapists specializing in trauma, college security services, private investigators he could trust. His children would go into the world protected, aware, and prepared. The doorbell rang, unusual at 10 p.m. Edgar checked the security camera. Officer Rhonda Hoffman. He opened the door. Officer, this is unexpected. Sorry for the late hour. Wanted to update you personally. She stepped inside, lowering her voice. Douglas Bean tried to hang himself in his cell last night. Edgar felt nothing. Tried. Guards found him in time. He's in the prison hospital now, on suicide watch. Hoffman studied him. Thought you should know. I appreciate the information. Edgar, what you did to these people. The financial destruction, the public humiliation. Some might say you went too far. And you? Hoffman smiled grimly. I say they tried to murder a child. They got off easy. She handed him a folder. This is from the DA. Natalie's trial is set for August. They want Molly to testify. Absolutely not. My daughter's been through enough. They anticipated that. They can proceed with the recorded evidence and Kenneth's testimony if Molly's not comfortable. Hoffman paused. Between you and me, the DA says this is the most open and shut case she's seen. Natalie's going away for life. Good. After Hoffman left, Edgar checked on his children one last time. Kenneth sprawled across his bed, laptop still open to YouTube videos about Alaska wildlife. Molly curled on her side, peaceful in sleep for the first time in months. Edgar stood in the doorway, remembering the terror of those weeks when Molly faded before his eyes, the horror of discovering his wife's betrayal, the cold calculation required to destroy his enemies while protecting his children. He'd been a soldier once, then an intelligence officer, then a security consultant. Now he was just a father, the most important role of his life. And he'd proven he'd burn the world to protect his children. But tonight they were safe. Tonight they slept peacefully in their own beds, healing from wounds that would leave scars but not destroy them. Tonight, Edgar Whitaker could rest. Tomorrow, he'd continue building the fortress of protection around his family. But tonight was for victory, silent and earned. Chapter 5, Revelations. The trial of Natalie Mann Whitaker began on a sweltering August morning. Edgar sat in the gallery with Kenneth beside him, Jacqueline Mann on his other side. Molly had chosen not to attend. Dr. Stevens supported this decision and watched from home via the court's remote feed. The prosecution's case was devastating. Day 1. Medical experts testified about the arsenic and pharmaceutical cocktail found in Molly's system. Dr. Clifford Haynes explained how the poisoning had been carefully calibrated, enough to cause serious illness, but slow enough to avoid immediate suspicion. In my 30 years of practice, Haynes said, his voice steady but angry, I've never seen such a calculated attempt to murder a child while maintaining plausible deniability. The dosing showed medical knowledge and deliberate intent. Day 2. Digital forensics. An FBI specialist walked the jury through recovered text messages between Natalie and Douglas, between Natalie and Bridget. The courtroom fell silent as messages appeared on the overhead screen. Natalie to Douglas. She's finally in the hospital. Stage 1 complete. Douglas to Natalie. Good. How long until stage 2? Natalie to Douglas. B says another week. Then we move on. Edgar felt Kenneth tense beside him. He put a hand on his son's shoulder. The specialist continued. We recovered over 300 messages detailing the conspiracy. The defendants discussed dosing schedules, insurance payout timelines, and methods for staging Mr. Whitaker's death to appear as suicide. Natalie sat at the defense table, her face a mask of stone. But Edgar saw the tremor in her hands, the way she avoided looking at the screen. Day 3, Kenneth took the stand. Edgar had prepared him as best he could, but watching his 14-year-old son face down a courtroom full of strangers and his mother was one of the hardest things Edgar had ever done. Kenneth, the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Faye Clark, began gently. Can you tell us what made you first suspicious of your mother? Kenneth sat straight, voice clear. She changed about 8 months ago, started being secretive, going out a lot, lying about where she'd been. I followed her a few times and saw her with a man who wasn't my dad. What did you do with this information? I kept watching. I thought maybe she was just unhappy, you know? But then Molly got sick, and Mom seemed almost relieved, like she'd been waiting for it. Can you elaborate? Kenneth's jaw clenched. When we got the call that Molly was in the hospital, Mom didn't seem scared. She seemed satisfied. And when the doctors said they didn't know what was wrong, Mom kept saying things like, sometimes these things just happen, or maybe it's just her time. Her time? Your sister was 16. I know. That's when I really started paying attention. Kenneth described his observations, the meetings with Bridget, the overheard phone calls, the way Molly always seemed worse after certain nurses gave her medication. And what did you do when you realized your father was in danger? I warned him, showed him what I'd found. We worked together to protect Molly and gather evidence. Kenneth finally looked at Natalie, his young face hard. I knew my mom was capable of a lot of things, but I didn't think she'd try to kill us. Natalie's lawyer, Lowell Crosby, had no meaningful cross-examination. What could he ask? Kenneth's testimony was factual, supported by evidence, delivered with the kind of clarity that came from speaking the truth. As Kenneth left the stand, Edgar met him at the gate. You did great, buddy. Can we go? I don't want to be here anymore. They left the courthouse, finding sanctuary in a nearby park. Kenneth sat on a bench, staring at nothing. She didn't even look sorry, he finally said. While I was talking about Molly almost dying, Mom just sat there. No tears, no remorse, nothing. Some people can't feel guilt for their actions, Edgar said quietly. Or they've convinced themselves they're the victim. How could she think she's the victim? She tried to murder us. She's had months in prison to rewrite the story in her mind. To blame me, to blame circumstances, to blame anything except her own choices. Edgar put an arm around Kenneth's shoulders. But the jury sees the truth. They see what she did. Will they convict her? Yes. The evidence is overwhelming. Kenneth leaned against his father. I'm glad she's not my mom anymore. Is that bad? No. It's self-preservation. You don't have to love someone who tried to kill your family. Day 4 brought Douglas Bean to the stand. He'd taken a plea deal, 25 years with parole possible in 15 in exchange for testimony against Natalie. Douglas looked broken. Prison had not been kind to him. The beating from his creditors had left him with a limp and a permanent squint from orbital bone damage. He lost 40 pounds, his expensive suits replaced with an ill-fitting prison jumpsuit. Faye Clark wasted no time. Mr. Bean, how did you meet Natalie Whitaker? At a charity gala. We were both unhappy in our situations, me with my debts, her with her marriage and financial problems. Douglas's voice was flat, defeated. When did the conversation turn to murder? About 3 months into the affair. Natalie mentioned her daughter had a large life insurance policy. She suggested if something happened to the girl, she'd have money to leave her husband and be with me. The courtroom erupted. The judge gavelled for order. Douglas continued, detailing the plot, recruiting Bridget through research into people who might have grudges against Edgar, choosing arsenic for its subtle symptoms, planning Edgar's suicide months down the line. Why did you agree to this plan? Clark asked. I owed $2 million to dangerous people. They were threatening to kill me. Natalie's plan would get me enough money to disappear and start over. Douglas finally looked at Natalie. I thought I loved her. I thought we'd run away together, be happy. And now I know she never loved me. She used me the same way she used everyone. I was just a tool for her to get what she wanted. Crosby's cross-examination tried to paint Douglas as the mastermind, Natalie as a vulnerable woman manipulated by a con man. It failed spectacularly. Mr. Crosby, Douglas said tiredly, I have text messages where Natalie described exactly how to dose her daughter without triggering alarms. She researched the poisons. She recruited the nurse. She forged the insurance documents. I went along with it because I'm weak and desperate. But it was her plan. Day 5, Bridget Dorsey, also taking a plea deal, confirmed every detail. She explained how Natalie had researched her grudge against Edgar, approached her with the offer, and paid her $20,000, 10 up front, 10 upon Molly's death. I knew it was wrong, Bridget said, tears streaming down her face. But my brother died, and I wanted Edgar Whitaker to feel that pain. I convinced myself his daughter wasn't innocent, that his family deserved to suffer like mine did. Do you still believe that? Clark asked. No, I was wrong. Molly Whitaker was a child, an innocent child, and I almost killed her because I couldn't let go of my anger. Bridget looked at the gallery where Edgar sat. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything, but I am. Edgar felt nothing. Bridget's remorse was too late, too hollow. The defense put on a perfunctory case. Character witnesses who described Natalie as a devoted mother before her breakdown, a psychiatrist who suggested she'd been coerced by Douglas. None of it mattered against the mountain of evidence. Closing arguments came on day 7. Crosby tried. Ladies and gentlemen, my client made terrible choices. But she was a desperate woman, manipulated by a con artist, driven to extremes by financial and emotional pressure. She deserves punishment, yes, but also compassion. Faye Clark destroyed this narrative in minutes. Compassion? Natalie Whitaker showed no compassion when she slowly poisoned her 16-year-old daughter. No compassion when she planned to murder her husband and frame it as suicide. No compassion when she recruited a nurse to be her accomplice in child murder. This wasn't desperation. It was calculation. This wasn't manipulation. It was greed. Natalie Whitaker spent months planning to murder her family for insurance money. She researched poisons. She forged documents. She lied to everyone who loved her. And when her daughter lay dying in a hospital bed, Natalie Mann Whitaker felt nothing but impatience that it wasn't happening faster. You've seen the evidence. You've heard from victims, accomplices, experts. There's no doubt about what she did. The only question before you is whether you'll hold her accountable for all of it. Molly Whitaker almost died at her mother's hands. Kenneth Whitaker lost his mother, not to death, but to evil. Edgar Whitaker was targeted for murder in his own grief. This family will never be whole again. That damage is permanent. Your verdict is the only justice they'll ever receive. Make it count. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Edgar waited in a conference room with Kenneth, Jacqueline, and Mario Pearson. None of them spoke much. When his phone buzzed with the verdict notification, Edgar's hand was steady. The courtroom was packed. Edgar sat between Kenneth and Jacqueline, feeling the weight of months of horror and hope compressing into this single moment. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree of Molly Whitaker, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of Edgar Whitaker, how do you find? Guilty. Down the line, insurance fraud, forgery, conspiracy, child endangerment. Guilty. 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 Natalie sat frozen. Her lawyer slumped in defeat beside her. Sentencing would come later, but the verdict was everything. Edgar felt Kenneth shaking beside him, not with fear, but with relief so profound it manifested physically. It's over, Kenneth whispered. Yeah, buddy, it's over. They left the courthouse into a media circus. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Mario Pearson handled them while Edgar shepherded Kenneth to the car, Jacqueline running interference. At home, Molly met them at the door. I watched everything. Dad, she's really going to prison. For the rest of her life, sweetheart. Molly collapsed into him, crying, not in sadness, but in release. All the fear, all the trauma, all the waiting to see if justice would be served, finally flowing out. Edgar held his daughter while Kenneth put his arms around both of them. Jacqueline stood nearby, tears on her own face. We're safe, Molly said between sobs. We're really safe now. You're safe, Edgar confirmed. I promise you, you're safe. That night, after the kids had cried themselves out and found sleep, Edgar sat in his office. Sentencing would come in 3 weeks. The prosecution was recommending life without parole. Given the conviction on all counts, that outcome was nearly certain. Natalie Mann Whitaker would die in prison. Douglas Bean would serve 25 years minimum, getting out, if he survived, as a broken old man. Bridget Dorsey would serve 20 years, her nursing career and reputation destroyed forever. Edgar pulled up the hidden camera footage from the hospital, the moment he'd caught them discussing how to murder Molly. He'd watched it dozens of times during the investigation, during the trial prep, each time feeling the same ice-cold rage. But tonight, he felt different. The rage was still there, buried deep, but on the surface, relief. Justice. Victory. His phone rang. Philip Field. Saw the news. Congratulations. Thanks, Phil. You did it. Protected your kids, destroyed your enemies, and made it all legal and public. Textbook. It wasn't about perfection. It was about survival. Still, not many people could have pulled it off. Phil paused. What's next for you? Edgar looked at a photo on his desk, Kenneth and Molly last Christmas, before the world fell apart. Next, I focus on my kids. Help them heal. Build a normal life again. And if someone else threatens them? Edgar's smile was cold. Then I remind them what happened to the last people who tried. After hanging up, Edgar opened his laptop and deleted files. The surveillance footage, the background checks, the financial records, everything he'd used to destroy Natalie, Douglas, and Bridget. The courts had what they needed. These files were insurance he no longer required. With each deletion, he felt lighter. The war was over. Victory was complete. He climbed the stairs, checking on Kenneth first. The boy slept deeply, peacefully. No nightmares tonight. Then Molly's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. Can't sleep? Edgar asked softly. Too much adrenaline. Keep thinking it's not real, that I'll wake up and she'll have gotten away with it. It's real. The jury convicted her on all counts. She's going to prison forever. Good. Molly's voice was fierce. She deserves worse, but I'll take it. Edgar sat on her bed. How are you really feeling? Relieved, angry, sad, happy, everything all at once. She looked at him. Is it wrong that I hope she suffers in prison? No. She tried to kill you. Those feelings are valid. Dr. Stevens says I'll work through them eventually, that the anger will fade. Maybe, or maybe you'll always carry some of it. That's okay too. Edgar took her hand. You survived something horrific. You're allowed to feel however you feel about the person who did it. Molly was quiet for a moment. Thank you for saving me. Thank Kenneth. He's the one who noticed first. I did. But thank you for believing us, for investigating, for everything. She squeezed his hand. You're the best dad anyone could ask for. Edgar's throat tightened. Get some sleep, pumpkin. Tomorrow, we start planning that Alaska trip. Hey, Dad. Yeah. I love you. I love you too. Edgar left her room and returned to his own bed for the first time in months. Not watching monitors, not reviewing evidence, not planning the next move in a war. Just sleeping. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Edgar Whitaker slept peacefully through the night. Chapter 6. Ashes to Foundation. 3 weeks later, Edgar stood in the same courtroom for Natalie's sentencing. Kenneth had chosen not to attend, but Molly sat beside Edgar, wanting to see the end of her mother's story. Judge Theodore Klein, a stern man in his 60s, reviewed the pre-sentence reports with a grim expression. Natalie stood before him in shackles, her orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the designer clothes she'd once worn. Mrs. Whitaker, Judge Klein began, I've presided over criminal cases for 27 years. I've seen murders of passion, murders for profit, murders born of rage or desperation. But I have never, in my entire career, seen such cold, calculated evil directed at one's own child. Natalie's lawyer stood. Your Honor, if I may. You may not. Sit down. Klein's voice was sharp. I read your sentencing memorandum. I understand your client claims remorse, claims she was manipulated, claims extenuating circumstances. I find none of it credible. He turned back to Natalie. You spent months poisoning your 16-year-old daughter. You researched the perfect poisons to cause maximum suffering while avoiding detection. You bribed a nurse to be your accomplice. You planned to murder your husband and make it appear he killed himself and his son in a grief-induced psychosis. You did all of this for money, not to save a life, not to prevent harm, but purely for financial gain. That makes you one of the most dangerous people I've ever sentenced. Klein reviewed the charges. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree of Molly Whitaker, life in prison. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of Edgar Whitaker, 25 years, to run consecutively. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of Kenneth Whitaker, 25 years consecutive. On the charges of insurance fraud, forgery, and child endangerment, 10 years each consecutive. The numbers added up to something approaching a century. Natalie would never see freedom again. Furthermore, Klein continued, you are to pay restitution to your children in the amount of $5 million, the value of the insurance policy you tried to collect on your daughter's life. This judgment will follow you for the remainder of your existence. Natalie finally spoke, her voice breaking. I'd like to make a statement. You've earned no such right, Klein said coldly. However, if your victims wish to address you, they may. Mr. Whitaker? Miss Whitaker. Edgar had prepared a statement, but as he stood, he realized he had nothing to say that Natalie deserved to hear. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at the woman he'd once loved, and saw a stranger. No, Your Honor. She's not worth my words. But Molly stood. Edgar hadn't known she'd prepared something. His daughter walked to the victim's podium, 17 years old, and carrying scars no child should bear. When she spoke, her voice was strong. I don't remember when my mom stopped loving me. Maybe she never did. Maybe I was always just an investment to her, a policy she could cash in when convenient. What I do remember is lying in a hospital bed, feeling like I was dying, and seeing my mom look at me with impatience instead of concern. I remember her hugging me while she planned my death. I remember thinking something was wrong with me, that I was paranoid or crazy because I couldn't believe my own mother would want me dead. But she did, and she almost succeeded. I'm alive because my brother is smarter than she gave him credit for, because my dad is stronger than she expected, because a nurse my mom didn't bribe actually cared about doing her job right. I'm alive despite my mother's best efforts. So I stand here today, alive and recovering, to say this. You failed. You tried to kill me for money, and you failed. You tried to destroy my family, and you failed. You tried to get away with it, and you failed. I'm going to college next year. I'm going to have a career, a life, maybe a family of my own someday. I'm going to live a full, happy life. And you're going to die in prison, alone and forgotten, knowing you threw away everything for nothing. That's not justice. That's poetry. Molly returned to her seat beside Edgar, who put his arm around her. In the gallery, Jacqueline Mann wept quietly. Natalie stood motionless, but Edgar saw the moment his daughter's words hit home. The facade cracked. Natalie's face crumpled, realization finally breaking through whatever delusion she'd constructed. Bailiff, Judge Klein said, remove the prisoner. As guards led Natalie away, she looked back one last time. Not at Molly or Kenneth, but at Edgar. And in that look, he saw everything she'd lost. Not just freedom, but her family, her future, her humanity. Edgar felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Faye Clark handled them, while Edgar and Molly slipped through a side entrance. In the car, Molly let out a long breath. I didn't think I'd feel this empty. What did you expect to feel? I don't know. Triumphant? Satisfied? Something. She looked at her hands. But I just feel tired. That's the adrenaline wearing off. You've been running on it for months. We all have. Now that it's over, there's a crash. Is this what victory feels like? Edgar considered the question seriously. Sometimes victory doesn't feel like winning. It just feels like surviving. That evening, Edgar ordered pizza, Molly's favorite, and they had a quiet celebration at home. Kenneth told jokes to lighten the mood. Jacqueline brought dessert. They avoided talking about the sentencing, focusing instead on the Alaska trip, now just 2 weeks away. Later, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Edgar found Kenneth on the back porch, staring at the stars. "You okay, buddy?" "Yeah, just thinking." Kenneth didn't look away from the sky. "Is it over now?" "Really over. The legal part is. The healing part, that takes longer." "How much longer?" "I don't know. Everyone's different." Edgar sat beside his son. "But we'll get there together." "Dad, when you found out what Mom was doing, did you ever think about just killing her yourself?" The question hung in the night air. Edgar chose honesty. "Yes. For about 5 seconds, I thought about it. But that would have made me no better than her. And it would have meant leaving you and Molly without any parents. So you destroyed her another way. I made sure she faced consequences for her actions. Legal, permanent consequences." Kenneth finally looked at him. "I'm glad you did. She deserves to rot in prison." "She does. And she will." They sat in comfortable silence, the summer night warm around them. Then Kenneth asked, "What happens if someone tries to hurt us again?" "Then I'll handle it the same way." Edgar's voice was iron. "Anyone who threatens my family will regret it." "Good." Kenneth smiled slightly. "Because I'm planning on having a long, boring, normal life. No more drama." "Sounds perfect to me." The next morning, Edgar received a call from Mario Pearson. "Natalie's been transferred to State Women's Correctional. Maximum security. She'll be there until she dies." "Good." "There's more. Douglas Bean hanged himself last night. Successfully this time." Edgar absorbed this information. "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. He was going to die in prison anyway, just slower. The universe saved the state some money, then." Edgar smiled grimly. "Something like that. What about Bridget? Still serving her time?" "She's been model prisoner apparently. Teaching GED classes, staying out of trouble. She'll probably get parole eventually. As long as she stays away from my family, I don't care what happens to her." "Fair enough." "Oh, and one more thing. The civil judgment against Natalie? Obviously she can't pay it, but we've attached it to any potential inheritance, future earnings, anything. If by some miracle she ever gets money, it goes to your kids." "Perfect." After hanging up, Edgar felt a strange sense of completion. Douglas was dead. Natalie was imprisoned forever. Bridget was punished. The courts had delivered justice. His children were safe. It was really, truly over. He found Molly in the kitchen, making pancakes. "Heard about Douglas," she said quietly. "News travels fast. Is it bad that I'm not sad?" "No. He tried to kill you. That's what I figured." She flipped a pancake expertly. "Dr. Stevens says my capacity for empathy isn't broken just because I don't mourn my would-be murderers." Edgar laughed, a genuine sound that felt rusty from disuse. "Dr. Stevens is wise. She also says we should talk about what happens next. Not legally, but emotionally. Like, how do we move forward from this? What do you think?" Molly plated pancakes, her expression thoughtful. "I think we spent 6 months in crisis mode. Surviving, fighting, processing trauma. But we can't live there forever. We need to choose to be happy again. That's very mature. Therapy's helping." She smiled. "But seriously, Dad, we need to be okay. Not just safe, actually okay. And that means letting go of the anger eventually." "Can you do that?" "I think so. With time." She met his eyes. "Can you?" Edgar thought about Natalie rotting in prison, about Douglas's body in the morgue, about Bridget's decades behind bars. He destroyed everyone who'd threatened his family. But could he let go of the fury that had driven him? "I'll try," he said honestly. "For you and Kenneth, I'll try." That became his new mission. Over the following weeks, as they prepared for the Alaska trip, Edgar consciously worked to let go. He deleted security footage he'd saved just in case. He stopped checking news about Natalie's incarceration. He focused on being present with his children. The Alaska trip was exactly what they needed. 10 days of pristine wilderness, grizzly bears, fishing, hiking. They laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. They took 1,000 photos. They made new memories, good ones, to layer over the nightmare. One evening, watching the midnight sun paint the sky in impossible colors, Molly said, "I think I'm going to be okay." Kenneth, beside her, nodded. "Yeah, me too." Edgar looked at his children, scarred but smiling, hurt but healing, and felt peace settle over him like a blanket. They'd survived. More than survived, they'd won. Not just legally, but in the only way that mattered. They were still a family. On their last night in Alaska, around a campfire, Kenneth asked, "Dad, what's the most important thing you learned from all this?" Edgar considered carefully. That family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up when things fall apart. You two showed up for each other and for me. That's family. Mom was biology, Molly said softly. Mom was a biological contributor, Edgar corrected. But she stopped being family the moment she chose money over you. They were quiet, watching the fire dance. Then Kenneth said, "I'm glad we're us. Just us. This is enough." "More than enough," Molly agreed. Edgar pulled them both close. Perfect. Chapter 7, New Foundations. 1 year later, Edgar stood in a Harvard University dorm room, helping Molly arrange her belongings. His daughter had not only recovered fully, but thrived, finishing her senior year with honors, earning a scholarship to study psychology with a focus on trauma counseling. "Dad, you're hovering," Molly said with amusement. "I am not. You've adjusted that picture frame 4 times. Edgar stepped back, hands raised in surrender. Kenneth laughed from where he sprawled on Molly's roommate's bed, scrolling through his phone. At 15, Kenneth had grown 3 inches and developed his father's athletic build. He joined a wrestling team, made honor roll, and spent his free time volunteering at a crisis center, processing his own trauma by helping others. Okay, I'll back off." Edgar looked around the small room. "You have everything you need?" "Yes, Dad. For the 10th time, I'm good." "Pepper spray." "In my nightstand." "The tracking app on your phone?" "Activated and shared with you and Kenneth." "Emergency contacts programmed?" "Including you, Kenneth, Grandma, campus security, and the Boston police." Molly hugged him. "I love you for worrying. But I'm okay. We've worked hard to get here. Let me enjoy it." Edgar held her tight. A year ago, he'd wondered if she'd survive to see 18. Now she was starting college, healthy and strong and ready for the world. "Proud of you, Pumpkin." "I know." She pulled back, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Love you." "Love you too." Kenneth hugged his sister goodbye, whispered something that made her laugh, then followed Edgar out. In the car, Kenneth said, "She's going to be fine, you know." "I know. You're still going to worry constantly." "Obviously." Kenneth grinned. "Want to stop for burgers?" "I'm starving." They found a diner, ordered enough food for 3 people, and ate in comfortable silence. A year of therapy, both individual and family, had taught them it was okay to just exist together without needing to fill every moment. "Dad," Kenneth said eventually, "I've been thinking about my future." "Yeah, I want to do what you do. Security, investigation, helping people." He met Edgar's eyes seriously. "What happened to us, to Molly, that can't happen to other families if someone's watching out for them." Edgar felt pride swell in his chest. "That's a good goal. You be excellent at it. Will you teach me?" "Not now, but eventually. After college." "Absolutely." Edgar raised his coffee cup. "To future plans." Kenneth clinked his soda against it. "To being okay." The drive back home, to the house Edgar had renovated after the trial, removing every trace of Natalie's presence, was peaceful. They arrived after dark to find Jacqueline Mann's car in the driveway. Inside, she left a note. "Stocked your fridge and made lasagna. Figured you'd be too tired to cook after dropping off Molly. Love, Mom." Edgar smiled. Jacqueline had fully embraced her role as grandmother and, though neither said it aloud, surrogate mother figure. She attended Kenneth's wrestling matches, sent care packages to Molly, and joined them for Sunday dinners. Over lasagna, Kenneth asked, "Have you heard from anyone about them?" Edgar knew who he meant. "Natalie's still in maximum security. Douglas is still dead. Bridget's up for parole next year. Will they let her out?" "Probably. She's been a model prisoner, and she showed genuine remorse. Edgar sipped water. I've made arrangements. If she's released, she's forbidden from coming within 500 miles of any of us. Violation means she goes back immediately. And Natalie will die in prison. She's not eligible for parole. And even if she were, the sentence was structured to ensure she'd never get it. Kenneth nodded, satisfied. They'd stopped discussing the case obsessively months ago, but occasionally it still came up, a scar that had healed but remained visible. The next morning, Edgar drove Kenneth to school, then headed to his office. He'd expanded his security consulting firm, taking on corporate clients, but also offering services to families dealing with domestic threats, stalkers, abusive exes, custody battles turned dangerous. His reputation as someone who protected families at all costs had spread. His client list was full. His secretary, Robin Browning, a former FBI analyst, greeted him with coffee and a stack of messages. You have 3 new inquiries. One's from Senator Dustin Walter's office. His daughter's being stalked by an ex-boyfriend. Set up a meeting. Edgar scanned the other messages. What else? That journalist who's been pestering you for an interview called again. Wants to do a feature on the dad who destroyed his wife to save his daughter. Robin's tone was dry. I told her you weren't interested. Correct. Anything else? Grandma wants to know if you're coming for Sunday dinner. Edgar smiled. Tell her yes. The work was satisfying. Edgar helped people protect their families, using the skills he'd honed in military intelligence and sharpened during his own nightmare. Each case he solved, each family he protected, felt like a small redemption. At lunch, his phone rang. Molly calling. Hey, Pumpkin. Everything okay? Everything's great. Just wanted to call and say I love you. And that I'm happy. Edgar's throat tightened. I'm glad, sweetheart. My roommate's awesome, my classes are interesting, and I joined a support group for trauma survivors. It helps to talk to people who understand. That's wonderful. Also, I met a guy. Molly's voice turned shy. He's in my psych class. We're just friends, but he's nice. Kind. Treats me like a person, not a victim. Edgar's protective instincts flared, but he tamped them down. Wanted to run a background check. Dad. Kidding. Mostly. Molly laughed. I knew you'd say that. But seriously, I wanted you to know I'm putting myself out there. Dating, making friends, living life. Like you taught me, moving forward. Proud of you. I know. Love you, Dad. Love you too. After hanging up, Edgar felt something unfamiliar, contentment. His children were thriving. He had meaningful work. The people who'd threatened his family were neutralized. Life was good. That Sunday, at Jacqueline's estate, 3 generations gathered for dinner. Molly had driven home for the weekend, bringing the boys she'd mentioned. Alex Blevins, a polite pre-med student who looked terrified when Edgar shook his hand. Mr. Whitaker, it's an honor to meet you. Edgar's fine. Come in. Over dinner, roasted chicken, Jacqueline's specialty. Alex relaxed slightly. He and Molly clearly liked each other, their interactions easy and genuine. Edgar watched carefully, his protective instincts on alert, but saw no red flags. Kenneth interrogated Alex about his intentions with all the subtlety of a freight train. So, you know what happened to our family, right? Kenneth, Molly warned. It's okay, Alex said. Yeah, I know. Molly told me. What was done to her was horrific, but she's one of the strongest people I've ever met. Kenneth studied him. And you're not going to hurt her? Kenneth, Molly's face reddened. Never, Alex said seriously. I respect her too much. Edgar raised his water glass. Welcome to the family, Alex. Hurt my daughter, and I'll destroy you. Dad, I mean it literally and comprehensively, Edgar continued pleasantly. I have resources, skills, and absolutely no mercy when it comes to protecting my children. Alex looked between Edgar and a mortified Molly, then laughed nervously. That's extremely clear. Noted. Jacqueline intervened. Edgar, dear, stop terrorizing the boy. Alex, would you like more chicken? The evening settled into comfortable chaos. After dinner, Edgar found himself alone with Jacqueline in the kitchen. You've done a remarkable job with them, she said quietly. Kenneth and Molly could have been destroyed by what happened. Instead, they're thriving. They did the work. I just protected them while they did. Don't downplay your role. You saved their lives, then taught them how to live again. Jacqueline squeezed his hand. I'm sorry for how I treated you all those years. I was blind to my daughter's faults and took it out on you. You've more than made up for it. Still, I want you to know you're a better parent than Natalie and I ever were. Those children are lucky to have you. Edgar had to look away, emotion welling up. Thank you. That night, driving home with Kenneth while Molly stayed with her grandmother, his son asked, "Do you think you'll ever date again?" The question surprised Edgar. Haven't really thought about it. You should. You deserve to be happy too. I am happy. You know what I mean. Like, relationship happy. Not just dad happy. Edgar considered this. Maybe someday. But right now, you and Molly are my priority. We're always going to be okay with it, you know? If you meet someone, I appreciate that, buddy. Kenneth was quiet for a moment. As long as you do a background check first. Edgar laughed. Obviously. Chapter 8, Convergence. 6 months later, Edgar received a call that reignited old fury. Mr. Whitaker, this is Officer Rhonda Hoffman. We need to talk about Bridget Dorsey. Edgar's hand tightened on the phone. She got parole? She did. 3 weeks ago. And she's violated the restraining order. Ice flooded Edgar's veins. Explain. She was spotted in Boston, near Harvard. Campus security identified her from the restraining order database. She was watching your daughter's dorm. Is Molly safe? Campus police escorted Bridget off property. She didn't approach Molly directly. But yes, she violated the order. We've issued a warrant. Where is she now? Unknown. She disappeared before we could pick her up. Hoffman paused. Edgar, I'm telling you this because I know you'll handle it appropriately. Don't do anything that lands you in trouble. I just want my daughter protected. Officially, that's what I assume. Unofficially, be smart. After hanging up, Edgar made calls. First, Molly's security detail. Yes, he'd hired private protection for her, though she didn't know it. They confirmed Bridget's sighting and were already increasing surveillance. Second, Kenneth's school, alerting them to the situation, ensuring his son was watched. Third, Philip Field. I need to find someone. Fast. Ooh, Bridget Dorsey. She's violated her parole and is stalking my daughter. I'll have a location in 3 hours. Edgar hung up and sat in cold fury. He'd allowed Bridget her freedom, her second chance. She'd repaid that mercy by threatening Molly again. That was a mistake she wouldn't get to repeat. By evening, Phil had an address, a motel outside Boston. Bridget had checked in using a fake name, but surveillance footage confirmed her identity. Edgar drove through the night, arriving at the seedy motel at 2 a.m. He'd come prepared, not with weapons, but with something more devastating, evidence. He knocked on room 12B. Who is it? Bridget's voice was muffled, afraid. Someone you owe answers to. Open the door, or I call the police and you go back to prison tonight. Your choice. The door cracked open. Bridget Dorsey looked worse than Edgar remembered. Prison had aged her, hardened her, but her eyes held the same desperate quality. Mr. Whitaker, I can explain. Explain how you violated parole by stalking my daughter? Edgar pushed past her into the room. Explain how you repaid the mercy of early release by terrorizing the girl you tried to murder. I wasn't terrorizing her. I was checking on her. You were watching her dorm. You were violating a court order that explicitly forbids you from being within 500 miles of my family. Edgar's voice was deadly calm. Give me one reason I shouldn't call the police right now and end your freedom permanently. Bridget collapsed onto the bed, face in her hands. I needed to see that she was okay, that I didn't destroy her. You don't get that closure. You try to kill her for money. Her well-being is none of your concern. I know what I did. Bridget looked up, tears streaming. Do you think I don't regret it every second? Do you think I don't hate myself for being so stupid, so angry, so willing to hurt an innocent girl? I don't care about your regrets, Edgar said coldly. I care that you're violating the law and threatening my daughter's peace of mind. I wasn't going to approach her. I just needed to see what? That she survived despite your best efforts? That she's thriving while you're broken? Edgar stepped closer. You don't get to seek forgiveness. You don't get to make yourself feel better by checking on your victim. You get to stay away and live with what you did. Bridget nodded miserably. You're right. I know you're right. I'll leave. I'll go back to Montana, Find a job, stay away. I promise. Your promises are worthless. Edgar pulled out his phone, showing her photos. This is the tracking device I had installed on your car. These are the surveillance photos of you in Boston. This is the evidence package I've prepared for the parole board, showing you violated terms within 3 weeks of release. Please don't send that. I'll go back to prison for 10 years minimum. You should go back to prison. You violated parole. That's how the system works. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. Bridget's voice broke. I have nothing. No family, no future, no hope. Prison was hell, but at least I knew what to expect. Out here, I'm lost. I thought seeing Molly okay might, I don't know, help somehow. Edgar felt zero sympathy. That's not my problem. You should have thought about your future before you agreed to poison child. I know. You're right. I destroyed my own life. Bridget wiped her eyes. So do it. Send the package. Put me back in prison. At least I deserve that. Edgar studied her, broken, pathetic, genuinely remorseful, but still dangerous in her desperation. He'd come here planning to ensure her re-imprisonment. But looking at her now, he saw something more useful. I have a better idea, he said slowly. Bridget looked up, wary. What? You want redemption? Earn it. I'm starting a foundation, supporting families dealing with domestic betrayal, medical abuse, parental violence. The kind of evil you participated in. You want me to what? Work for you. I want you to spend the rest of your life making up for what you did. Community service, speaking to at-risk healthcare workers about ethical violations, counseling other people away from the choices you made. Edgar's smile was predatory. You'll work under my supervision. You'll report to me weekly. You'll live in a facility I choose, work the hours I set, and dedicate every waking moment to ensuring no one else makes your mistakes. That sounds like prison. It's worse than prison. It's accountability. In prison, you could hide, could claim you'd paid your debt. This way, you pay forever. And if you ever violate my rules, ever come near my family again, ever make any choice I don't approve of, then yes, I send the evidence and you go back to prison. But this time, I'll ensure it's maximum security, solitary confinement, no parole possibility. Bridget stared at him. Why would you do this? Because destroying you quickly was too easy. This way, you become useful. You prevent others from making your mistakes. And I get to watch you suffer the consequences every single day while contributing something positive to the world. That's cruel. You try to murder my daughter. Cruelty is the least you've earned. Edgar extended his hand. So what's it going to be? My program, or back to prison? Bridget looked at his hand like it was a snake. But after a long moment, she took it. Your program. Smart choice. Over the next week, Edgar arranged everything. He found Bridget an apartment in a city 400 miles from Boston, far from his family. He connected her with a hospital ethics board looking for speakers about medical abuse. He set up a strict schedule and reporting system. The foundation, Kenneth and Molly's Trust, named for his children, would employ Bridget at minimum wage, taking 90% of her earnings for restitution. She'd live frugally, work constantly, and spend the rest of her life earning back the debt she owed. We told Molly about it. She was quiet for a long time. Dad, that's intense. Too intense. No, actually, it's brilliant. She want to check on me? Now she gets to spend her life ensuring other families don't go through what we did. That's justice. You're okay with her being out of prison? If she's under your control and doing something good? Yeah, I'd rather she be useful than just locked up. Molly smiled slightly. Plus, knowing you're making her suffer through accountability is somehow more satisfying than knowing she's just sitting in a cell. Kenneth agreed when Edgar told him, Honestly, Dad, you're scary good at this revenge thing. It's not revenge. It's consequences. Tomato, tomato. Either way, you're a badass. Jacqueline was more direct. You've turned her into a living warning to others. I approve. 6 months later, Edgar attended one of Bridget's speaking engagements, a nursing conference on ethical violations. She stood before 300 healthcare workers and told her story with brutal honesty. I allowed my anger and grief to convince me that harming a child was justified. I told myself the target deserved it because of her father's company's actions. I took money to poison a 16-year-old girl. I have no excuses. What I did was evil, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, knowing I never can. If you're facing financial pressure, if you're angry at a patient's family, if someone offers you money to cut corners or harm someone, please remember my story. Remember that one choice can destroy your life and the lives of everyone you touch. Choose better than I did. The audience was silent. After, Edgar approached her. Good speech. Bridget looked exhausted. Mr. Whitaker, I didn't know you'd be here. I like to check on my investments. You're doing well. Is she doing okay? You don't get to ask about her. Right. Sorry. Bridget looked at her hands. For what it's worth, this is helping. Telling my story, warning others. It doesn't undo what I did, but maybe it prevents someone else from making my mistakes. That's the idea. Edgar started to leave, then paused. Bridget, keep doing this. Keep earning your redemption. Maybe in 20 years, I'll hate you slightly less. That's more than I deserve. I know. Edgar left feeling satisfied. Bridget Dorsey would spend her life paying for her crimes. Not hidden away in prison, but publicly, constantly, usefully. It was a more fitting punishment than any cell could provide. And if she ever slipped, ever threatened his family again, Edgar had documentation ready to ensure she'd spend the rest of her natural life behind bars. Either way, she was neutralized. Another threat ended. Chapter 9. Elevation. 2 years after Natalie's conviction, Edgar stood in a conference hall as the keynote speaker at a national security conference. His reputation had grown. The consultant who dismantled a family murder conspiracy and turned the perpetrators' lives into cautionary tales. But more importantly, his foundation had expanded. Kenneth and Molly's Trust now supported 50 families dealing with domestic betrayal, medical abuse, and violence. They provided security consultations, legal support, therapy funding, and protective services. Every family they helped was a victory. Every child they protected was redemption. Family security isn't just about locks and alarms. Edgar told the audience of 300 professionals. It's about awareness, preparation, and knowing when people you trust become people you need protection from. My story isn't unique. Thousands of families face betrayal from within. What makes my case different is that I had the skills to fight back. Most victims don't. That's why this work matters. We give families the tools, knowledge, and support to protect themselves when their own people become threats. After the speech, people lined up to talk to him. Mothers whose ex-husbands violated restraining orders. Fathers whose former partners weaponized custody battles. Children escaping abusive parents. Edgar helped them all. Each case was personal, each victory a small piece of justice. His phone buzzed with a text from Molly. Dad, I got accepted to the PhD program. Full scholarship. Edgar smiled, typing back. Proud of you, Pumpkin. Tell me everything tonight. Kenneth sent a message seconds later. Molly's freaking out. It's hilarious. Also, I made varsity wrestling captain. Just FYI. Edgar's chest swelled with pride. His children weren't just surviving, they were excelling. Molly was pursuing her doctorate in trauma psychology at 20. Kenneth was a junior in high school, confident and strong, planning to study criminal justice in college. They'd taken their trauma and transformed it into purpose. That evening, Edgar video called both kids. Molly appeared on screen, beaming from her apartment in Cambridge. Kenneth joined from home, still in his wrestling gear. Tell me about the program, Edgar said. Molly launched into an excited explanation of her research focus, helping children recover from familial betrayal and abuse. I'm using what happened to me to help others. Dr. Stevens says I have unique insight because I've lived it. You'll be amazing at it. And Dad, Molly's expression turned serious. I've been thinking. When I finish my doctorate, I want to work with your foundation. Provide therapy services to the families you help. Make it a complete support system. Edgar felt emotion tighten his throat. That would be incredible. Kenneth chimed in. And when I graduate, I'm joining too. Security and investigation side. We'll be a family operation, helping other families survive what we survived. You've both thought about this? We talked about it, Molly said. What happened to us was horrible, but we can use it for good. Turn our worst experience into our greatest purpose. Edgar looked at his children, now young adults, strong and purposeful and whole, and felt overwhelming pride. Your mother tried to destroy you for money. Instead, she created two people dedicated to protecting others from people like her. That's the ultimate failure on her part. And the ultimate victory on ours, Kenneth added. They talked for another hour about plans, dreams, futures. When Edgar hung up, he sat in the quiet of his home office, surrounded by case files and success stories. His phone rang. Philip Field. Edgar, got some news. Thought you want to hear it directly. Go ahead. Natalie Mann Whitaker died this morning. Prison Medical says it was a heart attack. Natural causes. Edgar absorbed this information, waiting for some emotion, satisfaction, grief, anger. Nothing came, just a sense of finality. How old was she? 51. Served 3 years of her life sentence. Phil paused. Her body's being sent to the state morgue. No family claimed it yet. They won't. Jacqueline disowned her completely. The kids won't want anything to do with her remains. So she'll be buried in the prison cemetery. Unmarked grave. Edgar thought about the woman who'd once been his wife, the mother of his children, the person who tried to murder them all for insurance money. She died alone, unmourned, in a cell, with nothing to show for her 51 years but destruction and failure. Good, Edgar said quietly. That's exactly what she deserved. After hanging up, Edgar sat for a long moment. Then he called Molly and Kenneth separately, telling them the news with care. Molly was silent for a beat. Do we need to do anything? Funeral, or? Not unless you want to. I don't. She stopped being my mother the day she tried to kill me. I'm not going to pretend otherwise now. Kenneth was more blunt. Good riddance. Is that bad? No, buddy. It's honest. Then good riddance. She made her choices. Now she's gone, and we're still here, still thriving. That's the only ending that matters. The next day, Edgar received a call from Jacqueline Mann. Her voice was subdued, but steady. I heard about Natalie. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be. I lost my daughter years ago when I learned what she'd done. The woman who died yesterday was a stranger. Jacqueline sighed. I've been thinking about legacy. What we leave behind. What have you concluded? That Natalie's legacy is Kenneth and Molly. Not because she raised them, but because they survived her. They're proof that goodness can emerge from evil if someone's there to protect and nurture it. That's a kind way to frame it. It's the truth. You saved them, Edgar. You gave them a chance to become who they are. That's your legacy, and it's far better than anything Natalie or I ever could have accomplished. After the call, Edgar found himself reflecting on the past 3 years. The terror of discovering the conspiracy. The cold fury of dismantling his enemies. The satisfaction of watching them face consequences. The long work of helping his children heal. It had been the hardest period of his life, and also, in strange ways, the most meaningful, because he'd learned what he was capable of when his family was threatened. He'd learned that love could be stronger than hate, that protection could be more powerful than revenge, that building something good from ashes was the ultimate victory. Natalie was dead. Douglas was dead. Bridget was permanently neutralized, spending her life making amends. And Edgar's family was thriving. That was justice. Epilogue. 5 years later, Edgar Whitaker stood in the lobby of the Kenneth and Molly Whitaker Family Protection Center, a 5-story building in downtown Boston that served as headquarters for their foundation. At 49, Edgar had some gray in his hair, but remained sharp and fit. The center employed 32 people, security specialists, therapists, lawyers, and advocates. They'd helped over 300 families in 5 years. Molly appeared from the therapy wing, now Dr. Molly Whitaker, Ph.D. in clinical psychology. At 25, she was the center's chief therapist, running programs for children and adults recovering from familial trauma. Dad, the Reynolds family is here for their initial consultation. You ready? Always. Kenneth emerged from the security office, at 22 a licensed private investigator working on his master's degree. He'd inherited Edgar's instincts and added his own technological expertise. Got the background checks on the Reynolds case. The ex-husband is bad news, restraining order violations, financial stalking, the works. I've already drafted a protection plan. Together, the three of them met with the Reynolds family, a mother and two daughters escaping an abusive father. Over 2 hours, they listened, assessed, and developed a comprehensive plan. Legal support, safe housing, security protocols, therapy for the children, financial assistance. Everything Edgar had wished someone could have provided to protect his family before crisis hit. After the Reynolds family left, with hope in their eyes for the first time in months, Edgar stood with his children in his office. "Another family saved," Molly said softly. "Another victory," Kenneth added. Edgar looked at the wall behind his desk. Photos of the families they'd helped, letters of thanks, news clippings of successful prosecutions they'd supported. "Your mother tried to destroy us," he said. "Instead, she created this. A family dedicated to protecting other families. An organization that's saved hundreds of people from threats she represented." "That's poetic justice," Molly said. "That's the best revenge," Kenneth corrected. "Not just surviving, but using what happened to us to save others." Edgar pulled his children close. These remarkable young adults who'd transformed their trauma into purpose. "I'm proud of you both. Every single day. We learn from you," Molly said. "How to be strong, how to fight for what matters, how to turn pain into power." Kenneth grinned. "Also how to be absolutely terrifying when protecting family. That's a valuable skill." They laughed together. Easy, genuine, the sound of people who'd survived hell and come out stronger. That evening, Edgar had dinner with Jacqueline Mann at her estate. At 79, she remained sharp and engaged, serving on the foundation's board and funding scholarships for children who'd survived family violence. "Kenneth told me about the Reynolds case," she said over dessert. "Sounds like a difficult situation. They all are, but we'll help them through it. You've built something remarkable, Edgar. Something that will outlast all of us." Jacqueline smiled. Natalie's greatest fear was being forgotten, being irrelevant. Instead, her crimes created an organization that will help people for generations. Her name will be remembered, but only as the cautionary tale that inspired something good. Edgar raised his wine glass. To transforming evil into purpose. To family, the real kind. They clinked glasses, two people who'd found connection through shared tragedy and mutual dedication to protecting others. Later, alone in his home office, Edgar received an email from Bridget Dorsey, her weekly report. She'd given 32 speeches this year, counseled 18 healthcare workers away from ethical violations, and volunteered 300 hours at crisis centers. Her life was dedicated to atonement. Edgar's supervision had become lighter over the years as she proved herself reliable, but she remained under his watch. One mistake, one violation, and she'd be back in prison. So far, she'd made no mistakes. Edgar approved her report and closed his laptop. Tomorrow he'd meet with a senator about expanding family protection legislation.